What's going on, you loyal listeners? Thank you for tuning in to the L Squared podcast. I'm your host here, Luke Larson, and joining me today, as per the unusual, is a different special guest. This was one who he put in a lot of applications to be the new co-host. We've had a lot of chemistry over the years. He's a lot easier to deal with. He's a lot less expensive. And to be honest, I just trust him a lot more. So if you'd please help me introduce, like they're going to clap at home, my good friend, Burdette Dog, Tyler Backus.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Thanks for the amazing intro.
You're welcome. There it is. Yeah.
Oh, man. I love the new studio audience that you got here. Yeah.
These guys, I don't know where they came from.
Yeah.
They were just here when I started.
Yeah,
so.
Get 100 people to show up for a show like this.
Yeah,
live.
easy.
That's awesome.
All you got to do is put an ad in Craigslist. Say, I will pay you money if you come here. And then just don't pay them. And then they're all here.
Oh, shoot. Wait, they're leaving. Oh, I guess I should have mentioned that at the end of the show.
I don't know if they can boo. That's about as close as we can get.
Man. Oh, that audience is crazy.
Oh, no, don't shoot the laser gun.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, audience, the reason I have you on here, well, one, I'll just give a quick intro to the fans. You are one of my oldest and best friends, Tyler Backus. And you are the popcorn farmer.
Yeah.
The one who brought Jerdo and I together.
Yep.
Jerdo and I hadn't really met before we both worked for you on your farm that one summer.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm that guy, if you've heard that in the previous episodes.
I think we talked about it episode 1.
I remember hearing it since I've listened to all of your stuff.
Yeah,
you guys have talked about it, and I'm like, hey, that's me. And now I'm here for you.
And now you're here, finally.
Yeah, I'm here for all y'all.
We've been trying to get you on, but if it weren't for you, there would not be this L Squared podcast, technically. So
yeah, you two formed a huge bond.
Yeah, we did. We did not stop talking movies.
Yeah, that was great.
It was 8 hours straight of us just talking movies.
Yeah, I was really shocked how you guys just like completely latched on.
just
right
bonded.
Away. Yeah, just like complete perfection right there.
That's never happened before with me. Because I knew of him because he's like 4 years older than me. So like he was kind of a cool guy, sort of popular. Mm-hmm. And so I like knew of him. And then, like, you were like, oh, yeah, Jordan's going to come in. And I was like, okay, cool. And just, like, immediately, his first, he was like, oh, yeah, in this last year, I've kind of become sort of a movie critic. And I was like, oh, yeah, I've kind of gotten into movies this last year, too. And he was like, asked about Star Wars. You know, he's like, are you a Star Wars? I said nice mug because he had a Star Wars mug. That's right. Okay. And I was like, he's like, oh, you like Star Wars? I was like, yeah. And he was like, the originals or the new one? I was like, come on, the originals. And that's how it started. Just from there, it was 8 hours a day with just straight movies.
You know, that'd be interesting how long it would have taken, say, if he didn't bring his Star Wars mug in. For movies to finally come up. I mean, they do come up, and then I'm sure it would have broke in, but that'd be pretty funny if you went a couple weeks without knowing this vast knowledge of movies, both you guys.
Right.
To just bust into.
It's interesting.
Or at all.
Yeah, because we probably would have seen a movie at some point, like you and I. So I probably would have been like, oh, we're going to go to this movie. And then he would have said something unique where I would have been like, oh, he knows a little bit about movies.
Sure.
But I don't know how long that would have taken.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Just worked out.
It did. Yeah. Really perfectly. But one of the types of movies that Jordan isn't the biggest fan of is Marvel movies. And it's not entirely his fault. And as you've heard on the podcast, I talk a little bit about them, but you know, to old legs, they just represent like everything that's wrong with America. Like, they're just big, dumb, consumer-driven nothingness, you know. And it's like he's not all wrong either, but I don't pretend like everyone is the greatest movie ever made. So I let it, it's like whatever, to each his own. And with Juro, it's like he makes up his mind. It's pretty much set. Mm-hmm. But to be fair, he was like, and we'll get into the whole chronology of this if I said that right. Either way, I hesitated. So. But was that when the Avengers came out, and that was the one that really just was an atom bomb in the universe, was that he had a roommate who's kind of a pleb, and his roommate came back from seeing the Avengers and was like, Jordan, the Avengers is like a Star Wars, the new Star Wars for a new generation.
I remember hearing that.
And so instantly Juro's like, all right, fuck that movie. Yeah. So then he saw it just like, this isn't even good. And then like from there was like just hearing all the plebs like, oh, there's so many superheroes. So it just ruined it for him. And I understand that aspect of it. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of people, they're just fun, big, movies. Mm-hmm. For me, I grew up as a kid a comic book fan. I had some comics. My neighbor, Cody Frito, you're not listening to this, but shout out. he was like, just randomly one day was like, hey, I was hanging out at his house or something, and he was quite a bit older than me. And I found his old Spider-Man comics, and he gave me this huge stack of them. Just was like, yeah, you can have them, dude. So I've read them all. I was like, really? And I still have them to this day. But I loved them, and I read those things all the time. Yeah. And so that got me into that. And then the Spider-Man movies, the original ones, came out when we were young, you know. So I loved those movies, definitely, and really just ate that up. And that's kind of what started me. Onto that track, and since then I've kind of I've been going down that road ever since.
Yeah, and kind of my backstory is that same with the Spider-Man movies, as you stated, mm-hmm. which I believe a lot of people our generation or our age group, I should say, back then. Right. Really got into those Spider-Man movies, no matter how good nor bad they were, because we were just kids just watching Spider-Man. It was just awesome to see, and everything, mm-hmm. and so that kind of started it for me. I always was kind of into superheroes, but then as I kind of got older, I suppose I didn't really see all of them mm-hmm. Until I figured out the Avengers was coming out. Okay. And I thought, wow, having all the superheroes in one movie, that'd be fantastic. Because I never watched Hulk, Iron Man 2, when they came out. And then I think Thor came out. And I went to see Thor. And then I figured out the Avengers was coming out, and I just watched all those movies. I see. And caught up because I didn't want to be left out or anything like mm-hmm. that. And so it was when the Avengers hype kind of came around, I was pretty much in. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I like Marvel so much is just the connection between all of them. I can see why some people won't like superhero movies because, they just think they're copy and paste and everything mm-hmm. like that. But I watch the movies in between as filler to get to the next Avengers, things like that. I really enjoy the Avengers movies that come out, and so I guess that's why I kind of eat up all the Marvel superhero movies, things like that. Even the side ones like Doctor Strange and those, went to all of those when they came out. And it's funny, I think that because that they're so connected and there's quite a bit of them, I like those now even better than the DC universe. That was also kind of the thing back then. I never even watched the Batman, that trilogy until the third one came out.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Just because, I don't know, I guess it just didn't catch my attention. Trying to sympathize with Juro, how he hates them and everything. I guess I just wasn't interested right away, too, until I just knew the whole entire storyline and everything like that. Yeah. But ever since the Avengers, I've just been hooked on Marvel.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do remember, because obviously look, before all you trolls say, "Oh, you said Spider-Man, so wasn't in the MCU." Yeah, we know. All right, we know.
Yeah.
It was just whatever. Get off our ass, will ya? But I do. So those like got me into it, and then I loved the Spider-Man TV show. And, like, I loved the X-Men movies, the first two. I remember my half-sister, actually, first time I met her or spent time with her, she stayed with us. And she, like, brought X-Men 1 and X-Men 2. And we watched those, like, as a family. And I watched X-Men, the animated series. And I loved that show. And then, like, these were on. And I was like, oh, my gosh, this is awesome. I loved them so much. And it really got, like, the wheels turning, but then there were like terrible superhero movies in there too.
Yeah.
But I do remember seeing Iron Man for the first time, and it's such a weird thing to think about, like the world before shared universes, like before the Avengers was such a weird time. You know, it's hard to think about because it's so changed everything. But I do remember Iron Man, and I remember like it was towards the end of the school year. And it was like a parade day or something, so it was like the couple hours before the parade, so we were just hanging out in one of the teacher's classrooms, and she put on a movie on the projector, and it was Iron Man.
Oh, okay.
Because I think it had come out that year or the year before or something, and she put it on. I remember just like, because Iron Man was always like a third-rate hero. He was always just like kind of hokey, and you're like, that's kind of dumb. Like he was not cool like he is now. Like he was just kind of like, yeah, a guy in an iron suit, you know. It was just kind of like whatever. But I do remember like then I saw the movie, I was like, oh my, and everybody was like, he's so cool because he
Iron
is.
Man blew up.
And like I've even talked to some people who are way more into comics, especially nowadays, than I am, and they like pretty much all of them say like Iron Man in the movies is just way better than in the comics.
Sure.
Like it's fine, but they just said like to see that stuff move and you hear the mechanical like and the, you know,
For
like
sure.
that adds a lot to it other than just
does.
reading it on a page, you know. And I was like, yeah, I could see that. But I remember seeing the movie and just loving it. And I remember like me and my friends just being like, oh, when are they gonna play I Am Iron Man from Black Sabbath or whatever, and like they weren't playing. We're like, oh, I guess it's probably good. And then he's like, I Am Iron Man. It's like, on there. Oh my god, they played it. Oh man, so I remember that like really, I really liked that. That got me into it. And then but I didn't know, like we said, I didn't know it was a shared universe. I know the end credit, that was like the first end credit scene, the real one where you stayed after.
Yep,
and you're like,
sure.
Because I remember looking all the way through the credits when I'd watched after that, and then it's like I knew Nick Fury, and he's sitting there, and you're like, whoa, it's Nick Fury, like, and like I thought it was just like a throwaway Easter egg.
Yeah, for sure.
And then it started down. What came after that? I just want to look. So it was Iron Man, then the Incredible Hulk, which is good. It's a fine movie. It's hard to make a Hulk movie. And then Iron Man 2 was fine. I didn't love it. It's just not. They really rushed Iron Man 2 because the thing about Iron Man that really kicked off the MCU was that Iron Man was just kind of like a throwaway kind of project. Like they were like, yeah, you know, maybe if it goes well, we'll continue on with this.
Yeah,
and so it's
hilarious.
It is like it's funny just to be like, oh, whatever, we'll see. Disney's like, oh, we'll throw some money at it.
Yep.
But like Jon Favreau, who directed it, he and Robert Downey Jr. was the perfect guy to play it, but nobody knew that at the time. But like they didn't really have even like a finished script when they started, and so they were kind of just like flying by the seat of their pants, and they ended up making an incredible film. And then because of that, everybody was really excited and kept going. So they really rushed Iron Man 2 into production. And so I think that kind of hurt Iron Man 2 because I think they kind of captured lightning in a bottle with the first Iron Man.
Sure, yeah.
And so like Iron Man 2 was flashy and it was cool, but it just wasn't as good of a story.
Yeah.
You know, which is more of what you want. And then like they talk more about the Avengers Initiative in Iron Man 2 and stuff. But then Thor, which you and I both really like.
Definitely.
Thor was always one of my favorites superheroes. I just liked that he was a demigod and was just like a Viking. And but But yeah, that movie was really good. I'm not sure how well it holds up because I haven't seen it in a while.
The original Thor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But
I don't know, you just start throwing in these mythical gods or whatever, and how, I mean, they would have to really mess up that movie to make it not entertaining, because you get to see Thor, Loki, and Odin, all these people that you've read about in mythology, and it's just an amazing ride to go along, I think. But the original, I just remember Loki kind of messing up, and then that big tall destroyer coming in and destroying the town. I think it was an all right movie. I think at the time for sure it was like, I think if that movie came out now, people would be a little disappointed. But being that it was like the fourth installment, I think it was great back then.
And that was one too. It was the first time seeing Chris Hemsworth as Thor. And it's also great casting. You're like, oh man, because he is just big and beefy and and kind of dumb, which is what Thor is, and kind of cocky. And yes, but I think I agree but disagree. I think that I don't agree with your point of the I'm not attacking you, but like where I think it actually could have gone really wrong really easily.
Sure.
Because if you have those mystical things, they seem cool because we've seen it done well, but I feel like that could look really hokey and like really, really bad pretty easily. But they were able to treat it seriously, and the thing that I loved about that movie was that the way they explained the god's magic was so great. That was one of the best parts of the whole movie, when he was like, what you call science, we call magic. And it was just blew my mind. I was like, oh my god, that's just so cool. It was such a cool way to do it. And then introduce Loki, which was pretty much, we'll get into that, but it's pretty much like the only good villain throughout the series for quite a while. He's hard to beat. And him being a brother, and those just getting really good talent involved in that movie. Like Kenneth Branagh directed it, which is he's a Hollywood staple, but he was like a Shakespearean kind of guy. And so you could see a lot of that influence in there, which works for Thor, because that's kind of what, it's similar to that. But there was a lot of time on Earth. The only thing is that his powers kind of get taken away pretty quickly. So there's not a lot of time in the movie of him actually being Thor. And we saw Hawkeye for the first time. With his bow just randomly up in the thing.
Very small.
Just a little
snip.
Easter egg. So that was a really fun movie. And then Captain America, the First Avenger.
Definitely.
There's a big group of us that went to see that.
And
now
big group.
It's a big one. And now when you look back at this one, you're like, it's okay. It's a fun movie. But at the time, we ate that up. We loved it. And honestly, I still really like that movie. Because it was a period piece, and it really respected the material a lot. And it wasn't like, it was just it was just like a classic origin story.
That movie, I had so much fun with that movie when we went into the theater. Seeing him, as the scrawny guy just trying to enlist.
And it didn't look fake. It looked like a real tiny dude.
That was awesome. And then him, just finally getting in and going through the procedure. And, I share in Jordan's movie amnesia, but I can really recall that movie. There's so much stuff that just stuck out to me in that movie. I think it was great.
I think so too. I just remember loving it, and there was just, it just felt, it was just a very well told story. Beginning to end, and
very interesting all the way through.
It really was. It didn't meander at all, and it really set up his character as this guy with very strong morals, and you got where his character was coming from. And then when he finally got those, it really played on he's like, how do I use this? What am I going to do? And the Red Skull was great. He was so good.
His reveal was great.
Oh, it was so great. Everything about that was man, I just wanted more Red Skull.
I know,
that's the worst part, is that he doesn't make it out of that movie, which would be dumb. But you have like an old Red Skull, you can't really do that. I guess he has the same stuff that Cap took, so maybe he wouldn't age. But, and I don't know, they could probably bring him back if they wanted to. But he was really, really good. Not a lot of people talk about that.
Yeah, yeah. That's because that's the first movie that people pass on, is the Captain Americas.
Yeah.
Because I think, you got hit with Iron Man, where he's just flying around being a badass.
And snarky and sarcastic. Yeah.
And then you get Thor, which that whole universe is fascinating and everything. But then you get Captain America, and often people say, well, he's just an average dude.
Yeah.
He just is a person with a shield.
Yeah, and he's boring.
Which when they don't see their origin story, they miss that he's got superhuman strength and whatnot. But it's kind of a shame that people will pass on those Captain America movies, because the first one had you grabbed all the way through. The second one was him introducing him in a modern,
and we'll get
that one later. But definitely one to go see. I think.
Yeah, I think that's one of the more underrated of all of them.
For sure.
'Cause I even like that one more than some of the newer offshoot ones that we've seen.
Yeah.
Like, it's more unique, and, there is kind of a part in the middle. The second act kind of isn't as strong as the first and third act of it.
Yeah.
But overall, as a movie, I think it's a really good origin story. Like, a lot of these, like, Thor was kind of an origin story, but it wasn't really like him as a kid or anything. It was just him, and Iron Man was like that was a good story too. But like, I just feel like Cap's was like the most like it was just really fun, and I think we all had a lot of fun with it. And then that one was the end credit scene that I still think is probably my favorite end credit scene of all of them.
Yes,
is when he's in that room. And they're playing the radio, and like it's like in the 50s, because he lands the plane in the water. That was a great scene. Where he has that dance set up with that girl, and then he's like, "I'm gonna have to take a rain check on that," and to save everybody, crashes it into in the ocean, and then he wakes up in a hotel room. It's like in the 40s or whatever, and he's like, "I was at this game. It's on the radio." And he finds out it's a set, and he runs out into Times Square. And you're like, oh! And then Nick Fury shows up. He's like,
that's just, it's giving me chills now. Because you see him, and you're there with him. You think like you're in the past and everything again. Still, but then he's like, I was at this game. You see him start getting edgy, and you see him start getting really, like I'm
and then she starts
going
panicking, and she's like, "Oh no, he's awake or whatever."
And he busts through the simulation or whatever, and just like blasts out of the place right into the middle. And I think like in that moment, the shock that would do to your brain, waking up and then seeing Times Square when it was like 50 whatever years later,
right?
Like that must have just. You kind of put yourself in his shoes where you think like, what if I was from back then, and then just walked out into this massive overgrown city,
and nothing, and it's just like man, and I just remember that when I said that really like hits you in the heart. That hit me hard when he was like, he never had the courage to ask any girls out, and he's finally big and tough, and then like she liked him for him, and they had a date. And then he couldn't do it. And then now all of a sudden it's 50 years later. Yeah. And you're like, oh man, so good. Yeah. That was really good.
Really good movie.
I don't care what anybody says. That's a good movie.
It is.
It's really good.
I recommend you go see it.
Definitely. And then obviously after that, then it was the Avengers. It pops up and we're all like, oh my God.
Yes.
And then I remember that night actually, I went to one of the guys who I was there with, a friend of ours, I stayed at his place, and like we were just so jacked from that movie. We loved it, and we're just talking about it and talking about how excited we are for the Avengers, and we're looking on Netflix, and we see that there was an Avengers TV series, like animated, and we were like, and we were like, should we just watch this? And we were like, let's watch the first episode, because we were just expecting to be really little kiddish, you know. And we were like, oh, we'll just watch the first episode, and then you know, we'll see. And the theme song starts playing. We're like, oh my god, it was so cool, and it is a really good show. But it was like, I won't sing the whole thing, but we were like, oh my god, and it played, and it was fun. And so like the next day, that's all we did was watch that entire first season,
man.
The whole day. It was so good, and like we learned a lot about like the Avengers, and they hit a lot of big popular points in the comics, which is one thing. If I could go on a tangent quick, like that's really what helped me get into superheroes were the TV shows, because it takes a long time to read the comics and to know all the big arcs and everything. But when you watch a good TV show like the Spider-Man show in the 90s, the X-Men the animated series is one of the best ones, Batman the animated series, and then like that Avengers one was really good. And Justice League, I love the Justice League cartoon. Teen Titans is one of my favorite cartoons of all time. All those like really like, because they pay homage to the comics obviously, but it gives you a really good feel for the characters. I think that would be a good intro for a lot of people into these, like, because they're like, a lot of these are really good. Like the ones nowadays I don't like as much, because they seem like they're way more like and it's just stupid. I don't like them. But when they take it seriously, like, I think, because this can be kind of overwhelming if you didn't take it one step at a time like we did, but I think that might be a good intro. Anyway, we watched all that, and that got us excited for the rest. Oh, well then obviously that got us excited for the Avengers, and then I just remember, like, we also had a big group to see the Avengers, and somehow, this is still one of my favorite, maybe my favorite theater experience of all time, but we were lined up. We started the line outside the door of the theater. Yeah, we were probably there 2 hours early.
I remember that.
And we were all lined up, and then we bought our tickets. We haven't even bought our tickets yet. And then we rush in, and the theater's pretty much full. And there were, like 15 of us or something?
Yeah.
And I remember, like, finally looking at the top, I was like, there! And we ran up, and there was just enough for all of us.
That was
in the one row. I mean, like, I think a couple of us there were two people that weren't in our group that were kind of in the middle of us, but other than that, we were all, that was nuts that we could all, and then after we sat down, you just saw people just looking around and trying to stand in the hallways and stuff. Like, that was so perfect.
Yeah, our entire group got seated like right next to each other.
Yeah, that was awesome. Great. And then we saw the movie, and that was so much fun. I mean, that was such a good movie.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, again, I haven't seen this one in a while. I maybe should go back and rewatch it. But I do remember big points of this movie is that it was a spectacle. It was great. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time we all really knew the characters and their backstories.
Yep.
So we were all just, like, really invested in it. And we had so much hype. And it was good. It was really fun. I remember that they kind of watered down Captain America. I remember in that movie, like, liking Cap because of the movie Captain America, which I think a lot of people didn't see first.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And we had really liked his backstory. And even then it was like, I kind of wish Cap had more to do. I liked in the streets, I remember, like, him starting to order them around. And it was like, that's more like Captain America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's probably what sloped people off from Captain is seeing his part. The big one. Yeah, seeing his part there. Where, I mean, you got Iron Man still being snarky and whatnot, and Captain, he's just being the nice guy. Yeah, probably just didn't interest a lot of people. Right. I'd probably say the same thing. Probably would have went with like for Hawkeye and everything.
Sure,
Hawkeye didn't have much, and apparently, I think Jeremy Renner.
Yep,
there we go.
There you go.
Was kind of complaining about his role too. I think I heard but then he did get more dialogue and everything, and then you really saw.
Because at first you're like, he just has a bow. Yeah. What's he gonna do?
Yeah, the thing about the superheroes is you think like it's them, and then there's just these random other people, like this guy with a bow helping them. But like Hawkeye is prevalent. Like he's a he's a very important character, and I feel like they established that later on. Where it said, no, Hawkeye is with the Avengers. He's a main guy it's not just Iron Man and the Hulk. He's included.
And he does a lot, and I think he's underrated, and he is like a dude with a bow, but obviously has good accuracy.
Yeah. So I think eventually a lot more people warmed up to Hawkeye and everyone else, especially now, which we'll I guess talk on later too.
Right.
But yeah, originally when I first watched it, I was a pretty novice, I guess you could say, about the whole universe, and I would think like, it's just these people, and then they got some sidekicks, but I was pretty wrong the more that I watched, I guess.
The more it went on, and Black Widow had some good stuff in there too.
Yeah, definitely
in that movie, and just a lot of really nerd parts, like nerd out fun, like Thor and Iron Man and Cap fighting in the woods, like when Thor hits him with the lightning bolts. And then that charges his suit up, and then he blasts him. Yes. And then Cap blocks his thing with the shield, mows down the trees. Like, that's just all nerd stuff. Yeah. That was, like, honestly straight out of a comic book. Yeah. You know? Like, that was the best. That was just so many parts like that. And obviously the return of Loki, and his plan didn't make a lot of sense in retrospect of the movie. Yep. But it didn't matter, at the time. We just wanted to see them punch bad guys. And it was... Sure. It was just so fun. And then, like, the Hulk in that was great. He played... Hulk is best in the Avengers. Yeah. Like, it's really hard to do a standalone Hulk movie. Mm-hmm. He's best in an ensemble. And he really stood out in this. For sure. He had a lot of really great stuff. And when he gets out in the hangar up top... Oh, and S.H.I.E.L.D., like, being a comic fan, like, S.H.I.E.L.D. were always the group that were in the hovercraft in the clouds. That's always their thing. They're always up there just kind of watching stuff, and they stay hidden. So to see that realized, you're just like, oh man, and it looked legit. It wasn't like hokey. It was like, oh my gosh, like that was a big nerd moment for me too. But then when Hulk gets loose up there, and then Thor kind of fights him a little bit, that was really fun too. And it's just, and then obviously the final big fight in New York, that 360 shot of all of them standing together for the first time is great. It gives you the chills. Yeah. It's like,
very good cinematography.
Yeah. Just really, really fun movie. Perfect for what it was going for. And that was like, that blew everyone's mind.
Yeah, the hype that just fully delivered
right there, everything. and then that set the record for opening weekend box office of all time, which did get beat by Jurassic World and then Star Wars, the newest one. So, but at the time it slaughtered I think the previous one was the last Harry Potter, maybe.
I think so.
Yeah, and it just crushed it, and that was cool to be a part of that too. But I just remember just like going nuts, and then that started the whole thing that everybody was like, I remember so many people like, I haven't even seen the other movies, like now I want to watch Thor because Thor was so cool, and that, and all that stuff. And then that also, like we said, started the whole Iron Man's the best, Cap sucks.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. You could hop in to the Avengers and see it without
you totally
ruining everything. Yeah. So it was great to get a whole bunch of new fans off that movie to just get into the universe and everything. Awesome. Yeah.
Because I think that, like, even like we said, like, we weren't even really sure they were going to make it. We didn't. In the public consciousness, the connectivity of a movie universe wasn't there. It just didn't exist. Yep. Unless it was 1, 2, 3, 4, or like the same title. It just didn't quite, like, you were like, what? The only thing was Captain America, the first Avenger. Yeah. That was the first one where you're like, oh, are they going to do the thing?
Yep. When they all just, you could see superheroes from other movies, joined together, which has never been a real thing, right? Until like this moment on the big screen was like awesome. Yeah. It was so surreal.
And to play devil's advocate for that guy who said this is like Star Wars for a new generation, I equate it similarly to that, because I think this was like a new cinematic milestone. Yeah. Like, I mean, when Star Wars came out, there wasn't like a summer blockbuster like that before. There wasn't a movie that was just kind of, that was fun and like this weird space thing, you know, like, and that was such a huge hit and just became a cultural phenomenon overnight, you know, out of nowhere. And like, the Avengers had more leading up to it, but that was one where it was like, movies have changed forever from this moment.
Yes.
You know, and I feel like that was kind of the same with Star Wars. So in that respect, I understand what he was saying, but
I do too. Yeah. But yeah, where Jurdo probably got put off is, you know, Jurdo being a big Star Wars fan.
Yes,
and then
absolutely.
saying, "Oh, this is the Star Wars of now." I'm sure he got pretty pissed.
Yeah, and just out of context
very
like that,
context,
you know. I'm sure he was like, "All right, fuck that."
Yeah.
So whatever, you know, it's a shame, but
because you say that, and you really can't compare those two.
No,
you cannot
not at
compare
all.
Star
Not
Wars
at
and the
all.
Avengers. No. But, because, yeah, I think it's an amazing movie. And I think Star Wars is amazing, too. But, like, I don't see them close together.
No,
so,
I don't either. It's weird. Yeah, it's like, it's even, like you said, it's just
different genres.
They're completely different. And, like, the only thing that's similar is that they're huge, two of the biggest blockbusters ever. That's, like, the main thing.
Yeah.
That's this, you know, and you're kind of like an action-adventure, I guess. But, like, it's... Yeah, they're not even close, you know, and it's weird to whatever. Like, Star Wars is obviously a classic.
Yeah, the greatest rom-com could come out in our generation, and no one would say, "Oh, it's like the Star Wars." You know, like I know that's a stretch, but it's close because you just don't compare those two. No. You don't compare a rom-com with it. You know,
no,
they are totally separate. So I can see how that was very off-putting for Jordan.
Because he's like, oh, really? This is going to be the new thing that is going to mean more to me than my childhood.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies. Yeah, it was just a dumb thing for that guy to say.
It was,
But we'll move on from that guy. We'll let him be.
Set our points.
And then then they all of a sudden said, now we're going to start phase 2, which would be the movies leading up to the next Avengers. And so we were all like, what?
Yeah,
we're like,
definitely.
you know, we're like, oh my God, I think a lot of people, there's more. And I think a lot of people were scrambling to watch the other ones while these new ones were coming out. Yeah. And so they brilliantly started phase 2, like how they started phase 1 with Iron Man 3. Iron Man was clearly the most popular. Everybody's high off Avengers. People could not wait for Iron Man 3 to come out.
Yeah, that's the smartest.
It was. And that was a no-brainer. It was like, that was the only option right there. Mm-hmm. And that's why the opening box office for Iron Man 3 is actually huge. If you look back, it's like one of the biggest for the standalone movies of any of them because it was right after the Avengers.
Yeah, very smart decision on that.
Absolutely. And you and I saw that midnight showing, and I remember that was the first midnight showing that we went, and we were like, they had showings before this?
Yeah.
Because before that, it would come out, the release date would be like, let's say it was Friday the 13th, just for fun. You know, then it would come out Thursday the 12th at midnight, because that's the 13th right on the dot.
Yep.
So you're the first one to see it, that's when it comes out. So then we go, and it was a Thursday night, right?
Yep.
At midnight. And we went, and then, like, people were leaving. We're like, what's going on? And they were like, oh, they were from the 9 o'clock show, and there was a 7 o'clock show. And we're like, what?
Yeah.
We're like, and, like, that still bugs me to this day because, like, that was the first one I noticed to that. But I was like, because now they have the release date, but it comes out the day before, and it's not even at midnight.
Yeah.
And it's like, they have really, like a 3 o'clock in the afternoon showing for it. You're like,
really
what?
Pointless. It's so dumb, you know, because just say that it comes out on that day, you know, the day before. I mean, it works for like us now that we're working adults.
Yeah.
But just say that it comes out on that day. I mean, you don't have to.
It's just stupid.
Yeah, because I remember I booked the tickets for that.
Yeah.
For the group because it was midnight showing. We wanted to make sure we got our seats. And I was looking, and I'm like, wait, there was like an 8 and a 10 o'clock showing, you know, something like that. And I'm looking, I'm like, that can't be right. And I don't want to book that just in case I go. Because this was like the first that I can recall. Obviously, there was probably a couple before, whatever. But this happened, and I'm like, what? There's a 7 and 10 showing? Like, what is this? I'm going to book midnight just to be safe. But then, there's these people coming out of the theater. Already saw it. It was so weird.
It was a little bit. You're like, what? But like we were so excited to see it, and then you're like, wait, these people already saw it.
Yeah, yeah, really pointless. Just say it comes out that afternoon, but. It just confuses anyone besides like diehard fans that do the research. Either way, I guess we could complain about that on another time. But kind of a silly thing. But Iron Man 3, that's kind of interesting now that we kind of look at it. These heat people or whatever, that's kind of an interesting movie. I'd have to rewatch it to fully put my opinion on it.
This one I remember, and like. I haven't seen this in a while. This is one that kind of gets shrouded in a little bit of the fogginess, But I do remember that I was a little bit disappointed in it. But I remember for what it was, I liked it because you can watch it as an Iron Man movie. Same with Iron Man 2. If you're going into it wanting to see Iron Man be Iron Man, then there you go. Like, it's good in that. And I remember it being funnier. Like, all of these are really quippy. They just throw out these funny one-liners. But that one was funny in a different way. And it was Shane Black directing, who I know now. At the time, I didn't really know who he is. But he's very funny. And he has his own kind of style. And that was one where he put his spin on it, but they were still like, we have control. And the villain wasn't good, and that like with most of these movies, the villain is never that good. They always put more focus on the heroes. It's what they want to do, which makes sense, I guess. But I just really like villains, and when you really can feel where a villain's coming from, it makes all the difference. But whatever. So like I remember Iron Man 3 being like, and there's a kid character in it, like which always is weird because like. Subconsciously in your head, okay, this little kid's not going to get hurt in this movie. So anytime he's around, you're kind of like, it kind of takes a lot of attention out of it. But what I remember liking about Iron Man 3, which they played into a little bit, was he kind of having post-traumatic stress from the Avengers when he went through that wormhole and kind of died for a second, pretty much. Like him having that, like that was really cool. Like that was where they kind of really directly took something from another movie and continued it on.
Yeah, and you could feel the relation. It was from there on out that there was like little tie-ins and everything. Yeah, he was... That movie was like Iron Man at his lowest point, Like he was... He had a tic and everything. He would have panic attacks, and he was on a constant struggle to get out where he was. And what you were saying about that kid character... Yeah, it's kind of weird with him, but at least they added humor into it where, like, Iron Man was digging into this kid.
That's true.
I mean, like, dark jokes, kind of.
Yeah, like a lot of them. Yeah. There's one in particular that I remember that was really funny and dark.
Yeah, like, I mean, he had huge jokes that you would feel edgy saying to, any adult. But he was just saying it to this little kid, which any normal kid would probably just break the down and just bawl. But at least they kind of, like really put that kid in his place. Yeah. But it's still kind of weird. But
yeah. So overall, like, I think looking back on it, I think maybe if you were gonna do like a marathon of these movies, I think this one might be one that would be a little bit refreshing, because I feel like some of these, and especially now going forward from this point, a lot of them get a little bit cookie cutter. Yeah. Like the first phase was all pretty much origin stories, and then a lot of there's some second phase stuff that was a little bit origin-y, which people were kind of getting sick of. But I feel like if you were doing a marathon, this might be one where, because since it ties heavily into the Avengers, it's kind of a nice break from it. From the big epic story, and you kind of deal with him. But then there's that also epic other side of it too. But I feel like this one might be different enough where if you're watching all of them, you'd be like, oh, okay, I kind of appreciate that more now. And there's the big twist with the Mandarin. Whatever, spoilers, you guys don't care. But the thing is that I actually really liked, there's a twist in there. And I actually really like the twist. And the more I think about it, the more I actually really like it. Yeah. At the time, I was kind of like, okay. And then all the comic fans were like, "They ruined it, it's terrible." But even now, I'm like, I kind of really like that because it's
I do too.
Yeah, it was different. It was interesting, And it was like, that's kind of cool. Like, I enjoyed that little switcheroo at the end there. But then the next one after that was Thor: The Dark World, which I'm a big Thor fan, like I said. And from the first Thor, like, we liked that movie. It's a good movie. But like we said, I think everybody was kind of like, but I want to see Thor being Thor.
Yeah.
I want to see him wreck shit.
Mm-hmm.
And so Thor: The Dark World, everybody was like, okay, we want to see this. And I was hoping when that title came out, like, I was hoping as a Thor fan myself, there is a storyline in the comics where Thor actually, he actually dies. I think he gets actually killed by Hulk, I believe, in the comics, something like that. I think it is. I'm pretty sure he gets killed by Hulk because Loki takes over Hulk's mind, sort of, and then sends him in Asgard, and then he ends up killing Thor.
Yeah.
And so Thor is dead in the afterworld, and then Death is this mistress lady, and he actually convinces Death to put him back in his body, to bring it back to life.
Sure.
Evanescence style. Wake me up. Wake me up. That song is called Bring Me to Life. Anyway. Wow, I can't believe I just did that. But he gets brought back, and then he basically goes and defeats him, whatever. Yeah. But like, when I heard that title, I was like, oh, I bet that's when he goes to the underworld, and like seeing him, and I was like so pumped for that, and then it wasn't that.
Yeah, so, that would be a big downer. Because yours sounds awesome.
Yeah, like it was a really cool story and like really dark, and that I was like, man, that sounds really cool. And like I was like, and we saw a little bit of that with Thor fighting Hulk in the hangar. Like we could get more of that, but it wasn't. And you can go if you want because I have more thoughts on it. But
I guess I had no idea what to expect.
Yeah.
So I think I got a decent movie out of it. I think it's, definitely all right movie. I like the end of it quite a bit.
This is definitely one that I forget a lot.
Yeah. Well, I just remember the end where you really see Loki and Thor team back up.
Oh, yeah.
You think, like, wow, Loki does have a heart. And then the end kind of shifts. And you see, oh wait, you can really tell that Loki's still really sneaky and
God of mischief.
Yeah,
he's mischievous.
Yeah, and he comes around and if you remember the complete end where Loki doesn't actually die, and,
right,
and he takes the throne or something as his father, and who knows what happened to Odin.
Right, we'll have to see.
Very very interesting ending. I thought. They just dealt with a lot with that. I don't know, that material.
Yeah, the ether. I think they called it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I didn't like any of that. Really.
Yeah, kind of interesting. It's definitely not like bad. I don't think any of these Marvel movies were like bad. Right. But it's just like, it's not. Okay. It's not like top tier.
No, and this is another one where it's like, if you wanted to see Thor be Thor, you got it. But like, as far as like being a good movie or like a really coherent movie, I think it tried to be more epic than it really was, which is, which a lot of these kind of try and do, but you're like, okay. But I did hate the comic relief in it. I thought, like, at the time, I haven't seen it since, but I remember thinking this is the worst comic relief I've ever seen in a movie. Where she's like, mew, 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 mew. And then the kids, she's like, oh, come here, intern, or whatever. Like, I hated all that so much.
So you told me that before I watched it. Right. And so I kind of braced myself. And it wasn't too bad, I don't think. Because when it happened, I'm like, oh, okay. I thought it was going to be a lot worse.
Okay.
So I don't think it's that bad. But it's also not good comic relief.
No,
But yeah,
and I guess I was blindsided by it because in the first one she's like she's just a side character or whatever. She's not like that, and that's one thing. Like it starts with the main professor, Stellan Skarsgård or whatever, running around naked, being crazy at Stonehenge, and you're like, when did that happen? Because he was fine. Like he was mind controlled by Loki in the Avengers with Hawkeye or whatever too to get the thing. But like he was fine in Thor, and he was fine in the Avengers, and then now he's just crazy for no reason.
Yeah,
like that did not work at all for me. I didn't like that.
Yeah, these movies, the first phase is all origin. I feel like second phase, they started trying to find their footing, and then that last half of second phase, I think they started knocking it out of the park.
Because I think this is probably like the low point of it.
Yeah.
Because after this, we hit the high water mark for me. So after Thor: The Dark World, we get Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which to me still is the best Marvel movie, wall to wall. It's better than the Avengers for me. It's just a better movie. It's not as epic.
Sure.
But for me, like, this one is the one that's the hardest to beat. And that's why it sucks that people are like, I don't want to watch Captain America. Yep. And for all those people, I say, watch this movie, because this movie is great.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And if you know Captain America's story, then you know the Winter Soldier is, like, the main storyline that he has in the comics. Or not the main one, but, like, the big one for Raft, whatever. And so I knew it a little bit, but I'd kind of forgotten it. And then just seeing it played out, you're just like, oh man, it was so good.
It was good.
And I'll say the thing that everybody says about it, which is like that it was similar to like a 70s spy thriller. And when the Russo brothers, this was their first one they made for Marvel, they were known for comedy. They're two brothers, and they didn't do a lot of this dramatic stuff. And when they made this, they called it 3 Days of the Captain America, which is a famous old Robert Redford movie from the 70s called 3 Days of the Condor. Mm-hmm. And Robert Redford is in this movie.
Okay.
And so, like, they purposely made it feel like a spy movie. And it just... This one is the one where it's like, this is a great movie wall to wall, like Iron Man. It stood on its own. And like this one, you wouldn't even necessarily need to know. You wouldn't even need to know Captain America's origins to see this movie.
Yeah,
because I think most people know it anyway.
Yeah.
But this one was just like it played off him really struggling with like trying to keep his morals and everything that's happened in his past coinciding with his future and his present. In a literal personification that he's fighting against his past,
Yep.
So, what did you think of this movie when you saw it?
Oh, I mean, I thought, because I went to the theaters with some of my college buddies with this movie.
Shout out Ramon, was he there?
No, he wasn't. Oh, but Kyle was. Cosmo.
Oh, yeah, Kyle.
But I remember I thought it was really fun as well. I kind of forgot who Bucky was, and so I was a little detached. Mm-hmm. But then, like you said too, they really kind of inform you right away.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And then you get to see Cap struggle with Bucky, and then kind of the behind the scenes of Bucky being Bucky, and very interesting. You just get more of that, like kind of with the first Captain America, where they just keep giving you this storyline that just has you hooked 100%. All the way through. It's just so interesting, and then you figure out about the mind control and how Bucky is around, and it's so. I don't know, it's just
really good.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it just gets you.
Yeah, and this one was one where it was. Like we said, how we really liked the first Captain America, and this one's so much better, which is great. And it almost makes the first one better, too.
Yeah.
Because you know what's coming. And I love how they changed Bucky for the movies. It was perfect, because in the comics, Bucky was like Captain America's little kid sidekick.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
In the 40s, it was kind of annoying. But then when he became the Winter Soldier in the comics, the thing was that they kept, like... The Nazis kept freezing him and unfreezing him, which you see in this, but that's why he was able to age to become an adult in there, because they used him more than these guys do or whatever. But just like that's another one where I think like it's like Loki and the Winter Soldier are like two really big villains of the cinematic universe, because the Winter Soldier at least is kind of a little more recurring, which we'll get into that too. But this movie's like. everything that has been said about it has been said, but it's just really, really good, and it stands on its own, and it's original, which is hard to do, because a lot of these are like, hey, we're like Diet Avengers, but this one was its own thing, which is great. And like we said, like after Thor: The Dark World, this one was like, oh yeah, Marvel again.
Yeah.
Because it was like
this was the pickup.
It was because it got you excited again, because the first Avengers was such a big deal. We're like, oh my god, and then Iron Man 3, you're like, okay, and then Thor: The Dark World, you're like, is this all that they're gonna be?
Yep.
And then Cap, and you're like, oh yeah, Marvel.
Captain, just hit it.
And then they hit you with the left hook of Guardians of the Galaxy was the next one.
Man,
that is the most, for some people, that's the high water mark. I don't like it as much as the first, as Captain America, but like, so much fun. That's the most different out of all these, which is so it's so uniquely its own, is great.
Yeah, because you see Marvel hit the heroes.
Yep.
And they do such a good job with them, and then they start throwing in anti-heroes and whatnot. And people, I remember, were very skeptical about this movie.
Yeah, they were.
Because, we hadn't seen Marvel do something like that. And it gets raunchy a little bit and everything. And we're like, can Marvel do that?
Right.
And then they just release it, and everyone loved it.
Yep, everybody. And that it's such a weird thing, because it's like this group of like, space people, and there's literally a talking raccoon and a walking tree, and you're like, how is it going to be relatable? And then everybody loves it.
Oh yeah,
and it's such a fun movie. Like that is so much fun. Like that's the best thing about that. Like the Winter Soldier is more serious, and it's more of a conspiracy, and you really deal with emotions, where Guardians of the Galaxy is just a fun ride.
Oh, definitely.
So much action, so much lighthearted fun, which plays to its strengths. That's exactly what that movie is. And obviously, everybody loves that soundtrack. It's great.
Yeah,
that
definitely. The music and the visuals in that movie, just it's awesome. I was so happy to have that stuff into the universe. Yeah. That's kind of the first side heroes that we saw, right?
Yeah,
Guardians
much.
of the Galaxy, and I think that's another reason why some people were nervous. And people were questioning.
It wasn't directly tied into any of the other ones. Yeah.
People were questioning how they were going to be related, if they were even going to be in the universe. And so I think some people were ready to knock it. But they just came out with such a great movie. And it was very important that they hit this movie out of it. Because that set up the, faith in the other spin-off. Sure. Well, I shouldn't call them spin-offs. But the other side heroes building into the Avengers to come too, like Ant-Man. Yeah. Because if this movie flopped or just wasn't
then no
average,
one would give any other movie that wasn't like Captain or Iron Man a chance.
Yeah, they wouldn't. Yeah, that's
because they'd be like, "Oh, these aren't the main heroes." Guards, that was weird. We didn't really like that. You're absolutely right. I think that is very important. So like right there, and then. Right after that is the second Avengers, and that's when you're like, oh, cannot wait. Like Marvel is back, they're hitting it out of the park, and Avengers Age of Ultron, funny little tidbit, this one didn't make quite as much as the first one, and I think one of the main reasons, and I could be wrong on this, but I have a theory, was that the weekend that came out was the weekend of the big Manny Pacquiao Floyd Mayweather fight, which is the biggest fight in the last 10, 20 years, you know?
Yep.
And so, like, I remember a bunch of people having that on pay-per-view. It costs a lot of money. And it was the exact same weekend. So I think a lot of people were like, it's one or the other. Like, a bunch of bro sports dudes would go see a superhero movie, but instead they saw that. And so, like, it made the most money any movie's made that's not called Avengers. Yeah. And then a month later, Jurassic World beat them both. But, like, I do remember that being weird. But, like, Avengers Age of Ultron, the marketing was really good. And I've said this on a couple, like, I think the last pod or 2 pods ago. I was like, it depends what you define as good marketing. If you think marketing is, like, made to make you excited about a movie, make you want to go see it, this one had really good marketing. If the marketing you think should be accurately portraying what the movie is, then this one wasn't necessarily exactly that. Because this made it look really dark. Yeah. I remember that. Like, the trailers, they were like, this is the dark one. Like, I remember people being legitimately concerned that it wasn't going to have enough jokes. Yeah. Do you remember that? Yeah. People were like, oh, but they look so depressed and everything.
Yeah, they definitely did. They really did play that up.
They did. And so, like, I was really excited for that. Because the first Avengers, like, at this point, since we've seen all these other superhero movies, it was like, yeah, like, that was this big anomaly, but, like, it didn't really take itself too seriously. And then now, like, with these other great movies that just came out, like, we're okay with taking these a little more seriously. Yeah. And, like, Ultron was, like, this big, scary robot that Tony Stark invented, you know? Mm-hmm. And so, like, it was kind of his fault. And so you're like, that one I remember being excited for. And then I remember, like, there was, like, one final trailer for it, and they added a lot, like, more jokes. Mm-hmm. And so people were like, okay, well, hopefully it'll be jokes. And The Avengers Age of Ultron was good. I think it's a good movie. I think I saw it 3 times in the theaters. And
I think I went to it maybe about 3 times as well.
And I remember the first time seeing it, not really loving it, and second time liking it, third time really liking it.
That's exactly, because I remember watching the first time, I'm like, that was really fun. Yeah. I liked it. And I could have had more from Ultron, as a lot of people have said. You know, he was kind of scary. He was everywhere, but they didn't really play up on that. But, it was like, oh, that was good. And then went to it a second time, and I'm like, wow, I really liked it the second time. Right. And then went to it again, and I loved it. The usually it goes the opposite way, you know? Yeah. But, like, I thought it got better at least the second time that I watched it, and which made me then want to watch it again a third time. And I thought it got a lot better.
But there are low points in it. Like, the Thor storyline of that whole, like, chunk towards the middle, everybody knows what we're talking about. That didn't make any sense. That should have just been cut completely. Yep. Because it was like, it didn't make enough sense. You're like, whatever, just don't even have that in there. And they spent a lot of time at Hawkeye's family farm.
Yeah, they sure did.
They spent quite a bit of time. Which was cool to see a different part of the side of Hawkeye, but at the same time, you're like, all right, we spent enough time.
I kind of like seeing that, and I think that kind of helped Hawkeye get a little bit more known. Right. But, I just feel like there should have been a little bit more chills that, you know, Ultron is everywhere. Yeah. And he's, you know, going to mess up your city and everything.
And I do remember, after this, when back to Squirrel Feed, talking about Ultron being everywhere, I'm not just going on a tangent. Jurdo and I, like, we had talked about the Avengers, because this was after the Avengers had come out. Okay. And so we were kind of talking about it, and he was kind of how he was disappointed. And I said, like, I definitely am done with, like, a faceless army. But at the time, I just said I'm kind of done with, like, alien invaders. We have to fight aliens or whatever. So then seeing Ultron being, like, robots that weren't aliens, I was like, okay, I'm excited. But then it just kind of turned into another faceless army for them to punch.
And I still liked it, but it could have, because it got to that middle part of the movie where you just kind of felt comfortable, you know. They're at the farm, you know, they're comfortable. But I should have still felt like
the tension.
Yeah, because
should have felt
like that they were like pacing.
Like how are we gonna beat this villain that we've created? You know, we've created our own thing.
Because it definitely all of a sudden got calm. They're like, oh, you know, we're at the farm and it's relaxed and things like that. And if we were gonna be picky, that just a little change there where Ultron is always in their minds, right, and everything that would make the movie a little bit creepier. But
you saw like Hulk having, Black Widow being able to calm Hulk down and stuff like that was kind of cool, a different little part of it. Yeah, and obviously Vision was great. Yes, that was a great addition.
Holy cow,
that was probably the best addition. New character, he was fantastic. Yep. Great introduction and just perfect. Like, that was perfectly done. Because Vision in the comics is a weird character. Yeah. It's, like, hard to do. And the way they did it in the movies just like made it make so much sense and was like perfect. And he was played perfectly. Paul Bettany, just a great character. That just makes you so excited. And that introduction of like, can we trust him? And then he's holding Thor's hammer, which they set up before in a great scene where they're all like doing party tricks trying to pull the hammer up. That was so cool. Like, that's the cool stuff Joss Whedon brought, was like the really nerdy, fun stuff. Because he literally wrote comics before, you know, and he's such a big nerd. So like that stuff was really cool. And I just remember that little scene where they're all trying to pick up Mjolnir, and Captain America tries, and you see it move just a little bit, and then Thor's face is like, whoa. So you're like, oh man. And then just Vision, they're like, can we trust him? And he's like, here, just picks up the hammer, and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Because it says whoever is, you know, the most honorable or whatever. And so that one was good. It was good, and like, I think I haven't seen it since I saw it the 3 times in the theaters, I don't think. But I wouldn't mind rewatching it. I do remember loving like the Wakanda bring-in, which starts Black Panther, which I'm a huge Black Panther fan. I always have been. Like when I was a kid, like my favorite, just weirdly favorite heroes were like Spider-Man, obviously. As a kid, that's just easy to relate to. Mm-hmm. And then like through the comics, I loved like Doctor Strange, because he was in this great issue of Spider-Man, is the 500th issue, where there's this big battle going on, a bunch of superheroes die, and then he meets up with Doctor Strange, and they get pulled in this alternate universe where Spider-Man has to go and re-fight all of his foes and go through all. So it's kind of like a highlight reel.
Yeah.
And for whatever, that's a weird tangent, but like that just made me love Doctor Strange. Mm-hmm. And then like Black Panther was just like, he's a king of an African nation, you know, and they have this. The Black Panther is a mantle that they have to they pass down or whatever as the protector. And then Black Panther was featured in the animated show that we watched a lot. Okay. And he was great, you know. And it's just like, I've just always loved Black Panther character. So like when they said, oh, it's in some African nation, Wakanda, I was like, oh, that's Black Panther. So I got it immediately. And I was like, yes. And then, so overall that movie was good. James Spader's voice is great as Ultron. Yeah. He just has a great voice.
Definitely was.
And in the trailers, they made him seem more menacing, and then in the movie he was like a little bit funnier and just a little bit quippier. Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay. And I think maybe part of that was the studio being like, I don't know if we can go as dark here. We should probably lighten it up, you know?
Definitely, that's exactly what I think, why the movie went in the direction that it went. I think at least thinking of like positives about Ultron is like Ultron's evolution. How he started as scrap metal almost, you know, and he built himself up, and you saw him grow, you know, and everything. Yeah, there was definitely positives of Ultron. Yeah, since we've just kind of been hitting some negatives, but yeah, Ultron was
overall
still
good.
Yeah,
fun.
Still fun movie,
and it kind of and then. So after Ultron, but it still wasn't the high that we got from the Avengers or from leading up to it, again, because we were leading up to it with 2 great standalone movies with Cap and then Guardians, and then you're like, the next Avengers, it looks so dark.
It's just going to be boom,
it's going to explode again.
Yeah,
and it was like, okay.
And it was just there.
It was there.
Yeah.
You were like, okay, yeah, fun. And so they kind of like reset our expectations again. Yeah. And so I think a lot of people were a little bit down on it, but I should rewatch it because it has been a while.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But then after that was actually the last movie in Phase 2, which was Ant-Man.
Yes.
And we saw this together. I think I saw it. I know I saw it once before I saw it with you.
Yep, both of us did.
Okay.
And then we went to it in IMAX with your Mafia guest that you had.
Ashy boy.
Yeah, and we showed it to him for the first time. But I was so excited that this movie finally got made too. Yeah. Because like you heard a lot of like, I don't know, tension of this movie like not going well, things like that. But then when you finally saw it, when you finally saw it on the big screen and it got its first trailer and everything.
Now, before we get into it, should we talk a little bit about some of that tension?
Sure,
just to kind of build it up.
I'll let you go through it since you probably know a little bit more than me.
So, Ant-Man was a movie that Marvel had been trying to get made with Edgar Wright directing it from almost 2006.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
It was before the cinematic universe even started. It was before Iron Man. It was before. It was like we said. I love how we're really chronicling this because I've never laid this out in my head before.
Sure.
But before that was in the public consciousness of a movie universe, they were always just standalone movies, and it would be Ant-Man, Ant-Man 2, Ant-Man 3. You know, that's what it would have been. But Edgar Wright, the director of the Cornetto trilogy, which is Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End. He's one of my favorite directors. He's kind of like, some people say style over substance. He's very stylized, but he's just really fun and really fantastic director.
Sure.
And really funny. He has kind of his own quick style of humor, and his editing. They call it hip hop editing is what they call it, but it's a lot quick. I don't know. It's very unique, and he's got his own cool style. So with Ant-Man is another weird hero where it's I've never liked Ant-Man. You know, in the comics, he was always the white bread guy to me. He was annoying. And he always comes off as so whiny. Especially Hank Pym is the original Ant-Man, so that's who I knew as Ant-Man. Mm-hmm. But it was he was just so whiny all the time, and he was a scientist, and he was a pacifist. He was always I don't want to fight anymore. It's it's all you do is get small and big. Shut up. You don't, it's you've never hurt anyone in your life. You're just a little dude, and you do little tiny dumb things that are so niche and stupid. You know, he's just not a good character in the comics, because it's he's definitely a throwback character.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Back in the day. So it's kind of he was, and he's always I'm a pacifist. And it's just, he was just annoying to me all the time. So, but when you say Edgar Wright, that's okay, he's funny. He puts his own spin on things. And the thing that started a lot of tension was that, and again, this was before, I think there was a whole different set of producers at Disney, because I don't think Kevin Feige was there, because I think it was his kind of idea to do the cinematic universe.
Sure.
But this was they were trying to get Edgar Wright to do it, and the main thing that kept happening, so they were kind of trying to get it, and talks were stalling, but then all of a sudden the cinematic universe started. Iron Man was this big hit out of nowhere. They did not expect that.
Yeah.
So they started to run with that, and then they kept being in talks with Edgar Wright, and it kept like being weird because at the time when they were trying to make it before, it was in the old days of superhero movies where they could probably have a little bit more creative control. Mm-hmm. But then now it's like, oh, we have this successful universe. You have to fit it into our universe. Yep. And so then he was kind of like, well, I kind of already was thinking like this, and this is my vision. And they just kept control. And, you know, it's just unfortunate that it didn't work out between them because he's a great talent. He's one of my favorite directors of all time. But it's just, you know, he knew that if I made this for them, I would be compromising my vision, and I'm not going to do that. So, you know, they respectfully, as far as we know, parted ways, and you have to do that at times, you know, definitely. Like, so I respect the decision, but it just sucks because, like, we could have got a really interesting Ant-Man movie, but it probably wouldn't have fit into the universe as well. So, but they had Paul Rudd attached. Always, I think. Maybe not always, but most of the time. But then they brought in Adam McKay to do touch-ups, and he's directed most of Will Ferrell's movies. Okay. You know, he's an SNL guy, writer, really funny dude, and now it's kind of whatever. But they bring him in, and so when they said that, I was like, okay, I can do that. Like, he's not, in my opinion, he's not on the level of director as Edgar Wright, but he's a funny guy. He knows how to direct that. And we'll see what happens. So now I'll throw it to you to finish what you were going to say about when you first saw it. You were excited to see it.
Okay, yeah. Especially with, I don't know, back then I thought that when they were going to do Ant-Man, there's a reason that they're doing Ant-Man, you know, and want to introduce him to this universe, because I've just had confidence that they just knew how to put him in.
Yeah.
And so when the movie was finally getting going, I was so excited. I remember the teaser trailer, if you remember that. Back when they...
I don't know if I do.
They said the teaser trailer's coming out on this day. They said it's a tiny teaser. And then it came out and it literally was so small. If you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
It was so small.
You couldn't even see it.
Yeah, you couldn't see it. And it was so funny to me that even hyped me up even more. And then it said... the human-sized trailer gets released tomorrow, and you're like, wow, you know, that was great. So funny. And then you got to watch the actual teaser.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's just stuck out to me. Like, how hilarious, you know. But then, when the movie finally came out, and I'm a big Paul Rudd fan anyways.
I was going to say you've always loved him. It's hard not to love Paul Rudd.
He's such a goofy guy. But I just felt like it worked so well, and very funny style that they went with the whole time. Paul Rudd kind of being a anti-hero a little bit too, you know, not like a full scale like the Guardians of the Galaxy, but just a very weird hero that just happened to work out in the suit. And I just felt like they handled it so well.
They did.
Yeah, they definitely did.
And they used Scott Lang instead of Hank Pym. Hank Pym was Michael Douglas, who was the original Ant-Man, and then, Scott Lang steals the suit or whatever.
Yep.
And this, speaking of comic relief, might have the best comic relief character of all time. Michael Pena was the stories that would go on forever, and they edited to it. That was funny. Great. That was the best parts of the movies were those, where they just really went in deep with these just tangents that had nothing to do with anything.
Yep.
Michael Pena, great actor. That was so Adam McKay, but it was great. It was like, that's so funny and original. And the effects were really good. A lot of those effects they still had from when Edgar Wright was developing stuff.
Sure, yep.
But especially the first couple times you see him use a suit, it's cool.
Yeah.
This one was, I really liked it, because the thing is with this movie is that it's different, but it's very similar to a lot of movies. It's another origin story, you know, and him kind of going through a training montage was a little bit tiring. You're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, especially watching it, because I've seen it like 3-4 times now.
Okay.
You see the training montage, and it's got a little bit of goofs in it and whatnot.
Yeah.
But that's the slow part of the movie.
Yeah.
You watch it the first 2 times, and it's fine. It gets a little slow. I wouldn't say I hate when the training montage comes on. It's not like I'm looking for the fast forward button.
Right.
But it's all right. It definitely has its slow moments.
Yeah.
But I think the big moments greatly outweigh those slow moments.
Yeah, and it is just it's not the same, because Guardians of the Galaxy was really probably the funniest movie up till then.
Yeah.
And it was similar style, just very quippy. This was a different kind of humor.
It was definitely.
It was not just funny little quips here and there. It was just actual funny stuff, almost a comedy in a lot of times. And it didn't the nice part was that this movie didn't take itself too seriously.
Yeah.
It didn't try to be this huge epic thing, which I think a lot of these other side ones were, standalones were just a little bit like Thor: The Dark World and Iron Man 3, you know, and they were kind of just trying to be epic for epic's sake. They weren't really you didn't really buy it. So this one was a little bit smaller scale, and pun, because he's small, but it worked. And a lot of the action and effects were very good, worked very well, and obviously the comedy really stands out. So I feel like this one, if people do these long marathons, I feel like this one would probably be one that would be a nice little break, you know, a little bit different.
Definitely.
When he fights Falcon is one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's the Falcon.
Yeah, when they fly to what they think is this abandoned warehouse, but it's actually the Avengers. Avengers platform. It's just everything that he does. Paul Rudd. He just has just the way he says it or whatever. Just kind of like you say, it's such a different humor that went, oh my, it's the Falcon.
It's the Falcon.
Yeah, and the greatest thing is he's such kind of like a fanboy of all these people too. He's such an underdog hero that every time he meets these people, he was fighting the Falcon. He's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, sorry,"
sorry.
And he's like taking him down. And I was gonna say one more thing too. I love the way that they handled their like big sponsorship in it too. Baskin Robbins.
Oh,
like the Baskin Robbins.
Greg Turkington. Tim and Eric stuff. Yeah. Oh my god,
that's true. But so funny the Baskin Robbins.
They weren't ashamed. They like made jokes of it and made it like an actual its own joke, and it worked.
Yes, it worked great.
It did. Baskin Robbins always finds out.
They just kept throwing Baskin Robbins in your face, and it was so funny.
It was funny. Like, it really worked well, and I think, that I remember that. That was very funny.
Yeah, Ant-Man, I don't know, great movie, I thought. Yeah.
The only side effects, or bad parts, villain sucked, again.
Yeah.
Just very, very, very forgettable villain.
Basic villain. Yeah, at least it wasn't, I mean, he had a face. You get to learn him.
Yeah.
Not like the worst villain, but very
forgettable.
Copy-paste villain, I'd say. Yeah.
Same with like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And
nothing special about him.
No.
Best part is that he had a suit too.
So you see the two small people fighting.
Yeah.
Not midgets.
Yeah. But great movie.
Really fun. Yeah. And then just recently we've gotten into Phase 3, which again started off with a bang. One of the best movies. Captain America Civil War, which, like, to me is one of the better ones too. And it
this might be my favorite.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to beat. And I think people go both ways on it, and I think a lot of people were going to see this, because this was, when this came out, I knew so many people that were like, I'm never going to watch a Captain America movie, and they see this, and they're like, oh, I'm going to see that because it looks like a mini Avengers movie, and I think this was like more the spectacle that we wanted Avengers Age of Ultron to be, but this one, like, I will say this, like, for the people that were like, yeah, it was good, I will say Captain America Civil War had so much to do. It had so much riding on it. Yeah. And the fact that it was able to spin all its plates and do all those things well is an anomaly. Like, it really, because it was like, it needed to be an actual Captain America movie, not just an Avengers movie, not an Iron Man movie. It needed to continue the storyline with Bucky, and Cap, which was already great from the Winter Soldier. It needed to set up the Black Panther, introduce him, which we had never seen before. It had to bring in all these other characters and not shed too much light on them, And then it had to set up the government against them and everybody kind of being like, I don't know. It had to use that tension and not make it feel forced, really make it earned. And then, also introduce Spider-Man, which we just before this came, like not a couple months before it came out, Marvel got sharing rights with Sony to get Spider-Man back.
Oh, man.
So then it had to figure out how to do Spider-Man, which I'll just say this, preface it, Civil War is a big staple in the comic lineup in the last few years. Well, now I guess it was like 10 years ago, but I have a couple of the Civil War comics, and they're really good. They're really interesting. And it is Captain America versus Iron Man in the comics, which is cool that it played out like this here. But obviously the comics are much different than the movie. And the way they did, and then that was the other thing it had to do was it had to represent the Civil War comic, which was very popular, and do it well, but it couldn't do it the same because, like, one thing in the Civil War comics, Spider-Man was a big part of it, and like he couldn't be a big part in this because he wasn't in any other movies, but this movie just like. I loved it. Yeah. And I could not, like, I remember, like, so here's a story for you. When I went to see it, I went opening night, Thursday night when I got off work, and I get off at 9, so I went at, like, a 10 o'clock showing or something. And I remember this, it was the month of May, and I was only I'm still at this job, but I was only at the job for like a couple months at that point, and this was finally my first really good month. It was going really well. I was on top of my team. I was finally, like, after a couple months of not doing well, I was finally doing really well. I remember, like, I don't want to say what I do, but I was like, I was having a really good night. I'll say that. It was Thursday, and a couple of my coworkers didn't work Fridays. At the time, I worked noon to 9, so I didn't have to be until noon or whatever. But I was going to go to this movie that night, and so like something happened, and they all wanted me to go out to the bars with them after, and I was like, I'm going to go see this movie and I have to work tomorrow. But after this thing happened at work, but I just had a nice night, so I was like, all right, I'll come out with you guys for a little bit. Ooh. So I met them at, shout out to Wiley's, and went to Wiley's. And, like, this is the first time I'd ever been drinking with coworkers, you know, and they really wanted me to go out. So I went, and I found them there, and was like, hey, guys. And they're like, oh, we're buying you a drink. So, like, I had, like, a drink, and then another drink, and they're like, all right, shots. Oh, and so, man. Like, yeah, so, like, we're having fun. So I did a shot, and then we're, like, hanging out. 2 other people didn't do their shots, so I did them for them. And then, like, they were going to buy me another drink. I was like, no, guys, I have to drive. Like, I probably shouldn't even be driving at this point. So, like, I left them to go to this movie. And so I was, like, a little bit buzzed, you know, from that drive across town to the theater to get there an hour early. Because you need to, you know. So I bought my ticket. I sat in line. And I was probably, like, the 10th or 15th person, so I was going to get a good seat. Mm-hmm. And so I sit in line, being a little bit buzzed, for over an hour, and then they open the doors, and then we go, and I get my seat and everything, and, like, obviously with Winter Soldier being my favorite and I think the best, I had it was hard because I had really high expectations for it, but I knew it had to do so much, so it was kind of tempered.
I definitely put my expectations low, just to be safe.
Right, because it was like, how is a movie going to do all the things that we want it to do, you know? So, like, I went into it, and it just blew me away. I was like, I cannot believe how, like, perfectly they did everything in this movie. And, like, honestly, thinking back on it, like, I can't think of one, like, low point or one point that I would cut out of the movie. Like you know, like with Ant-Man, we said it's a good movie, but it's a kind of slow train montage, or like some of these, the villain's not that good, or it has pacing issues. This one is like just pretty much perfect across the board. I have one little gripe with it, but I'll let you talk and then we can get into that.
Sure. Kind of like what you said, the movie had so much to talk about that is kind of scary that they're going to mess that up.
Yeah.
Because we've seen movies try to cram so much in and just be a disaster.
Yeah. Batman v Superman came out like the weekend after, a weekend before, or like 2 months. It was like in March before this. This came out in May. Right. Batman v Superman, and it crammed so much shit into there. Yeah, it ruined the movie.
Yeah, it wasn't executed well.
No, and so like I thought that was gonna hurt this movie because it was like, well, we just saw that, and so
Yep. Which they had to introduce new people. They gave plenty of time to everyone else, even the kind of the new ones from the older movies or from the movies prior. Like and not Scarlet Witch and everything like that.
And not everyone was in this movie either, but
they kind of showed everyone.
Yeah. And I think did it better than Age of Ultron did. I think they balanced the time better.
Yeah, this movie I felt like did just a great job, and that's why there's not really a low point because like it did so much stuff. But like I said, if you try to do that with all the movies, if they slip up, it just keeps slipping up.
Right.
But like it just happened that everything worked out great. Yeah. And so it made the whole movie just super entertaining.
Yes.
But yeah, and then the big fight with everybody was so...
The airport scene.
Yeah, it was so awesome.
God. Like, that was right out of a comic. It was like, oh, man.
Like, I didn't watch that and say they could have done this better.
No.
I had such a ball with that.
Yeah.
And
it was great because you're like, I like people on both sides, which is exactly what you want.
Yep.
You're like, I don't want you guys to fight, but this is so awesome, but you shouldn't be fighting.
Because it's just like, you got Cap and you got Iron Man, big people. And then, like for me, I was so torn between Ant-Man and Spider-Man being on different teams because I was just like, I love you, Ant-Man, and when Spider-Man finally got into this movie, I rejoiced too. Like, I was so happy.
And their setup for Spider-Man was perfect.
Yeah.
I could not believe how perfectly they did that.
Oh, my
and like
goodness.
that could have easily been a part where you're like, it was definitely an add-on. And you're like, that could have been like one where you're like, we don't need it, which we didn't, but it was great. Like even without this, the movie would have been great. But then they do that perfectly.
They do. They
right out the box.
It great. And like we got to see who this Spider-Man was, kind of a little snarky kid or whatever, sarcastic, I should say. Which all of his jokes landed.
Yep.
And that's just kind of scary, right? Too, because like he could be saying these crappy, sarcastic, and just like everyone's turned off, especially on the brand new character, fresh off all the other Spider-Man movies that people weren't liking.
Yeah.
But this Spider-Man's here, and he's fantastic. And everyone else, like you said, too, was introduced really well. Everyone was great. You rooted for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was so hard to pick a side.
It was. And Black Panther, one of my favorite characters from the comics, got introduced, and they did it so well. Like, he didn't have a lot of screen time, but when he did, they set him up so well. And, like, bringing back Bucky, and Bucky continuing his great storyline into this movie was awesome. And then bringing Black Panther into that, and then like having him and Iron Man having opposing sides, which they had thought differently throughout the other movies, but this one like really was earned. Like it felt so real and earned. Like you felt like they were friends, and they were like just not agreeing, and they just couldn't put their differences aside.
Yep, they couldn't.
And like this was the one where their past was starting to come up to bite them with kind of a lot of the destruction that's happened because of them fighting. And like Vision was a great like mediary. He was on Iron Man's side, right? But he was especially one where it was like Vision, like you're so like he was just so perfectly in the middle, and you're like you feel for him because he's probably the most genuine character. He doesn't have any kind of baggage one way or the other, and like I don't know, just this is just a really just an amazing movie, the way that it was able to do all those things so well.
Yep.
The one, I'll put this to you, the gripe some people have is the villain of the movie, Zemo, Baron Zemo, who he is a long-time Cap villain, and in the comics he wears like a purple mask and has like a leopard fur thing and a sword, so they did this better than that. But I personally... I liked the way they did it, and some people had complaints about his plan, saying that it didn't make sense, and I'm like, okay, but like, it may have been a little bit convoluted, but it didn't bother me at all because it was like, it made sense, and like we said, for the little bit of screen time, I bought it, and it was just kind of like, look, maybe you didn't plan everything out perfectly. The Joker's playing The Dark Knight. There's no way you could plan everything out perfectly. But like in real life, when you look at it backwards, there's an old saying that's like, when I look at my life in reverse, it looks like everything happened for a reason that led to this and this and this, which is what you do but you don't know that going forward. So he was probably just taking these opportunities as they came, and going from there. It did not bother me, still doesn't bother me. I really loved... Because I remember watching this movie distinctly, and there's a point where you kind of saw it was going to come, where Iron Man and Cap finally get on the same side, and they go to the final third act battle together, And, like, you're finally we're friends.
Yep.
Like, finally we can fight the bad guy and win. And, like, the twist that happens... Because I remember distinctly thinking when Iron Man was on his way to help him, I was like, this movie has been so perfect so far. Even if this is just a generic sky beam, they have to fight a faceless army. Like,
sure.
Even up to this point, this movie has been fantastic. So even if it's just a bland ending, I'll be okay. I'll still love the movie. And then, like, it just shell shocks you.
So confused. Yeah, you're like, what?
You're like, what? Like, because it was setting this thing up. So you're like, all right, here we go. And then it just completely 180s you.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, what?
Uh-huh.
And like, the way they're able to pull, even that, to put in that kind of a twist into the thing that this movie's done so much. It was.
Yeah.
And, like, just a... It was literally like a record scratch. It was like,
yeah.
And then, like, he's there with Bucky, and then... that thing happens, and you're like, oh, shit.
Yep.
And, I mean, I don't want to spoil it, because it's a little bit newer for people.
Sure.
But I'll just say...
it is really great.
It is really great. You should. And I think... I'll just say, the spoiler warning, I want to say one thing really quick. If you haven't seen it, spoiler warning for like 30 seconds, maybe a minute.
Sure.
Come back in. Just mute it for like a little bit and come back. Okay, so spoilers right now. Okay, mute it. So, I just want to say that when that twist happens and you find out that the reason he was brainwashing Bucky wasn't to get all the other super soldiers, it was to show the footage that he actually killed Iron Man's parents.
Yep.
And, like, God, when he flips and Cap is like, it wasn't his fault, he couldn't control or whatever. And he's like, I don't care. He killed my mom. The best line of the movie.
Yeah, because you watch it, and I don't know. We can probably be spoiler free here.
Okay,
so, we can avoid, But,
right.
But yeah, you hear him, you see it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, come on, don't snap, Iron Man.
Yeah.
But then what he says. You think it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, you're right. Like, I would...
Yeah.
Like, I know it wasn't him, but
it doesn't matter.
I watched it. Yeah. Like, that would...
Oh.
I felt like I would have been, like, a little mad at Iron Man if he didn't say that. Because I was kind of like, no, you're friends now. But then what he says is just like... Boom, it's a bombshell. It is, and you understand why he's so mad.
In that one line, it's perfect. Where it was just like, because I felt the same way. You're like, no, you're finally back, don't fight now, like, you're finally friends. And when just with that one line, you're like...
chills,
Yeah, 100%. And you're like, I get it. Like, I feel it. Because it's like, I don't know what I would do if that, happened. Like...
Ugh.
Oh, man. Like, how has this movie done so many things so perfectly? Oh, and, like, we didn't even talk about the airport scene with Ant-Man being played so great.
Yeah,
his tiny little part was perfect in that movie. It was just great. Like, it was just him, and it was fine. You saw him as Giant Man, and I could tell the way they put him in there. It was kind of like I think even... War Machine was like, who are you again? Yeah. Because I think that's what everybody was like. I didn't go see Ant-Man. Who is this guy? Yeah. And then they gave him perfect, so funny.
It was and it works with his character so well too, because he's like a fanboy, of everybody. And so when he got to see everybody, he's like, "Oh my gosh, Captain! I'm so happy to see you." And then he's actually here, ready to fight with everyone. And then everyone's like, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
And he's just like, "Oh, come on, guys! Like, I respect you all. Can't you know who I am?"
Yeah.
And then he establishes himself again, kind of like what you say for the people that probably missed his movie, as like, hey, I'm Giant Man now, and his part, in that movie was just so great. And then you had Spider-Man coming up with the plan to take him down. Both those characters coming out for kind of the first time for some people, and just blowing it out of the water.
Was phenomenal. Another high watermark for Marvel. And I hate to go back, but so flip-flopping again to the ending. yeah, like in that bunker when they're fighting, it's so emotional.
Oh, yeah.
And you just like, and this was one where this movie had phenomenal trailers. And I remember thinking too, like, Ultron had really good trailers. They probably weren't as good as these, but like, you know, it's like this movie can't do everything perfectly, and then it did plus some.
It did.
Which I don't think it gets enough credit for. I think a lot of people saw it and were like, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted. But it's like, I don't think you get how hard that was to do.
Yeah, for sure.
How easily it could have gone wrong at every turn.
Yeah, that's just kind of the thing where if it's done well, people don't notice it.
Yeah.
If it's done bad, people notice
Right.
it. You know, just like...
Like CGI.
Yeah.
It's a big one.
Just like how if the music is just perfect, you don't notice it.
Yeah, it's
because
great
it's
music.
it's just there, you know,
Yep.
and you just don't think of it. Where if it's off, you know, then you notice it.
Right.
And yeah, that's what I don't think people will, you know, give it its credit for. Is they don't see the new characters added, the screen time to the existing characters, and the introduction to everyone else.
Yeah, and making everything else make sense that came before it, and bringing it through and giving it enough time that it makes sense that you buy it.
Yeah, and the emotions that you feel.
Yeah.
Everyone having to fight everyone that they also
Very
like.
emotional. Like, this might be the most emotional one where you really feel these emotions.
Oh, it just pulled at your heartstrings
Big
the
time.
whole time. Yeah, the whole movie.
And like, this is one, too, where if this came out in phase 1, which wouldn't make sense, but even if it did, and we hadn't had all these movies before it, we would have been like, wow, this is a big spectacle. We haven't seen anything like this. But we wouldn't have cared as much because we didn't have all that time to set up these storylines and set up these characters so well.
Yep.
You know, so like this one, again, was a perfect placement. And it was like, boom, Marvel's back, baby.
Really was.
Yeah.
Honestly. Yeah. What a great movie. Go and buy that.
Yeah.
It's a good one to keep.
It's on Netflix. I don't care. Go buy it.
Yeah. If you're thinking about renting it, just buy this movie. It's fantastic.
It is. And I think, you know, and even if you haven't seen all the movies or don't have all the movies, it's fine. Like, if you know the main stuff, even if you just listen to this podcast, which has been about as long as one of these movies, we'll fill you in on all of it, and you can just go into it and really appreciate it. And the villain, it really worked. My one gripe with this movie, I'll say to you, is just that... Oh, well, there's one Ant-Man line that I didn't love, where he gets done being Giant Man and his mask comes off and he's like, does anyone have orange slices? Like, the first time I heard it, I kind of chuckled, but then I thought about it and was like, that doesn't make sense. And like, because then I was like, okay, and then I was like, wait, what is he referring to? So I was like, is it because he's an ant man and likes sweet stuff, or like... it just didn't click with me.
I just think it was just a random thing that he said.
Yeah, that's kind of what I took it
He's
as,
just like,
which would be funnier.
I want orange slices. Like, that's
just
what I
this
want.
Just a random thing. Yeah, okay.
Like, that line does get me. I think that one's pretty funny. It's so unpredictable.
That's
so
true.
weird.
Yeah.
And it kind of
That's
fits
kind of what
him.
I took it as. Yeah, but I wasn't sure if I was
That'd be
missing
really
out on
crappy,
something.
you know, thinking that, like, oh, he's an ant. You know,
that's
like,
what I thought.
That would be so bad.
I know, because I wasn't sure how to take it. I was like, that would be really stupid.
That was Disney's intent. That'd be so stupid.
Yeah, which there was a time where superhero movies would have done something like that.
Oh, gosh, that'd be so bad.
Yeah, but that's not my gripe with it. The only thing that I don't absolutely love about this movie, and it's so like, that's the big thing about this movie, is no movie like this has been so epic and contained at the same time. Like, keeps going back and forth so well of being huge, big, skeptical, and then really personal, emotional moments, like we said, which is like an anomaly. It's very, I mean, this movie's great, but the ending, the very end, and again, kind of spoilers, but it's just, you would probably expect it if you know Marvel movies.
Sure.
But just like the very end of it is just that, because they had that big disagreement, and you're like, oh, you're so down. You're like, oh my gosh, are they ever going to get back together? And then they just kind of quickly end it by being like, oh yeah, we're still kind of friends. Like, Cap breaks out the rest of his crew from the prison, and then he sends Tony a letter, and just like, oh, if you need me, just call me. and then like it was just kind of that felt added on to me. It felt tacked on,
Sure.
which I get. It's like the people that watch these movies and get together. Like, there's a lot of kids who watch it, and like for me as an adult, I like the darker ending. Yeah. But I get for like kids where you're like, you see the darkness, and then they're like, but it's okay,
Yeah.
So
I feel like, if they didn't do that, they'd have to play off like that they always kind of have this beef to each other.
That's true.
And so, or if they didn't and kind of ignored that, people would probably wonder why are they back?
That's true.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of give you a rebuttal, but yeah, I mean, having like complete separation in the group is a great ending too. Right. I feel like if they just didn't have to keep going,
right,
like
then it would have been a better ending.
But
I feel like I guess it would be a little bit jarring if in the next movie they're like back together.
Yeah, I feel like they'd take like then 15 minutes or something to try to explain them.
That's true.
Getting back together, where they could have just like, I don't know, send a letter or something.
And they weren't like totally together. It was just kind of like, hey,
Yeah, and I'm sure it'll be weird.
It'll be awkward,
but it wouldn't be probably as weird.
Right.
But, who knows?
No, that's a solid argument. And, like, that was the only thing. Because, I guess you're right. If it just ended there, like, being completely separated, that's where you really feel the weight of everything, which you still did.
Oh, yeah.
But it was still, like... It was basically, like, the ties weren't completely severed, which you thought they might have been. Yeah. So, I guess we're okay there. So, now coming down from another high point, not to a low point, just, like...
To that... average.
To the average again was the next one, which is Doctor Strange, which to me, I didn't love the Benedict Cumberbatch casting. I'm not a huge Benedict Cumberbatch fan. I think he's good. It was definitely a safe casting because I was like, I can see him as Doctor Strange. Again, Doctor Strange has been one of my favorites for a long time. And I kind of wanted more of a unique twist on it where they played it because Doctor Strange is such a weird character.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll get into more of that too in a bit. But like, I kind of wanted a different take on it. And this was, but I guess going into it, it was just cool for me to see like this weird kind of niche character having his own movie in the Marvel universe, like having his own treatment and stuff. And that was pretty cool. So I was like excited to see it. Yeah. But I didn't have huge monster expectations. But what did you think going into it?
Very interesting. Such a you could almost feel like it's not a Marvel movie, I'd say. Just the way he is. It's kind of more but also it is,
right?
Because like I said, you could also say almost the same for Thor.
Okay.
But like this is he's doing these dimensional portals and all that. It's kind of like you just have to program in your mind that this is also a thing that can happen.
Sure.
But after you get used to it, I liked the movie a lot.
Yeah.
I'd say I liked it a lot. Not like we were just like. Heavily talking
about Civil War.
Yeah, like I wouldn't rave about this movie, but I liked it as what it was. Especially, it's so you know that I like that style of just kind of like really trippy. Yeah. I think it could have been so much more trippy, and I would have loved it too.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, if they added a little bit more trippiness, I suppose maybe the more trippy you make it, the more people would jump off. But very interesting to learn about, dimension or like the entering, kind of like Inception almost, where they can craft their own areas.
And I think you hit the nail on the head with saying about the trippiness, but I think for the whole movie, because this is such a unique, weird character that they really had to water it down to fit it into this universe. Yeah. So like the way they were able to, because in the comics, a lot of that stuff is like kaleidoscopy colors and stuff. It was created in the 60s, so it's a lot of that kind of stuff, which would look bad in just a live action movie. Yeah. So the way they were able to make like buildings fold over and make it like realistically trippy was awesome. Like the effects are the best part. Like the effects team did fantastic with this film, but like. Yeah, so I think they did that well, but like the first trippy scene is so trippy when he gets mind blasted.
Yeah,
like,
I was gonna say,
here we go.
Yep.
And then it gets there sometimes, but not quite as good as that.
That mind blast was like,
you're like,
whoa,
yeah, let's keep going forever.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, and it was, it's a good movie, but it's very watered down, and which makes sense because it's a lot for just a normal audience person to take on. Mm-hmm. Like there's so much exposition in it because there's so many big words, and it's like magic. Yeah. It's not just like godly powers or like space. It's like a different thing. Yeah. It's like interdimensional stuff, like you said. So like there's a lot of exposition, and like the training stuff I felt like they could have done better at. It did feel very montage-y and didn't feel as earned as I wanted it to be. Like, if you want to look at a great training montage, Batman Begins probably does it the best.
Sure.
When he goes to fight with the ninjas with Liam Neeson in the mountains.
Yeah, that's
like,
very...
That is like the best.
You definitely saw him earn that.
Yeah. Like, that's what I always think of is like, that's the one that's the hardest to like beat because you really earn it with that. With this one, it's kind of like, okay, like he's here. And
I'm sure they could have broadened on it, but they like hit so hard that he was just this best doctor. Yeah. And that he had an accident and then he was just, crippled. Yeah. And I mean, you saw a lot of that in that movie.
You did.
I feel like, I saw more than what I expected to see of that.
As him as a person before he was,
and then him like struggling to get by from there on out. They really focused on that.
I guess that's a good point. Like I think if you were a producer and you were like, this movie's too long, should we focus more on his training or more on the character setup? Yeah. You have to go with the character setup. You have to be invested in him.
Yeah, and so they just had to.
Yep.
Who knows, what another Doctor Strange movie could do.
Right. That's a good point.
But yeah, it was definitely a picking and a choosing of what they needed to focus on. Which, who knows if they could have split it a little bit more so you could see a little bit more training. Yeah. I feel like exactly what you said there. I mean, because it was just like, oh, I suck, and I'm getting better, and now I can make portals really good. Yep. Yeah. Interesting. I could have done with a little bit more of the training too, but I suppose that because you really did understand his situation. I mean, they really made you know how much he was suffering with being shaky hands now and everything. So,
and how like that was his whole identity, was being this cocky guy who was the best surgeon. And then you really saw its whole world be turned upside down. Which they could have done that in a montage style, just like, oh, he was great and now he sucks, and here he goes the mountains. Yeah, I guess I see you there. They did, and then the other thing was I remember with this movie is like I think they tried too hard on the humor. They were really forcing the issue on the humor. Sure. They really tried to force in a lot of jokes that felt very, very forced. Mm-hmm. They were like trying to be really quippy, and they're like, well, people like Marvel movies, there's a lot of quips in them. But like it makes sense for like Iron Man because that's his snarky kind of character. Mm-hmm. But with Stephen Strange, like you want him to be different than Iron Man, and it felt like he was saying things that Iron Man would say.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah, and it just it didn't really hit with me a lot of the time. There were a couple that were good, but a lot of times you're like, okay.
Yeah, because honestly, when I was watching that movie, the first thing I thought of is like him and Iron Man in a room. Yeah. Like, just like hating each other. Right. And I thought when he gets introduced to Iron Man, like, they're just going to like hate each other because they're so much alike. They exactly what you said. Yeah. They're so snarky, cocky, people. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I think that'll be a good dynamic. Yeah. But it wasn't different enough in this movie to separate them. So
because it's funny, like you say that, the first thing I thought about was Iron Man 2. So probably a lot of people had that feeling. I'm guessing. So
and like it was kind of like it was sort of like with the spells and everything. Like I'm kind of a nerd with that. Like I said, I love Doctor Strange, so I love like the weird things he does with his hands and the weird language he speaks. But it was kind of like, oh, he just read a book and now he can do it. It was a little bit like. it wasn't as earned as I wanted it to be.
I definitely get you there.
So then, like, when he's fighting and stuff, you're like, okay, he's just good at it now. You know, it wasn't quite as, like, good as I wanted. And obviously, like, the villain's not set up very well. A pretty good introduction, because when they introduce the villain, you're like, okay, wow, like, this dude is pretty evil. Yeah. But then it was like, meh, and you're like, okay. And then... but throughout it, it's another origin story, you know, and we're kind of sick of them at this point, I think, for most people.
Yeah.
But it was different enough, but I mean, I think the people who really like this movie would be like the people who didn't think they were going to like it going into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I think the people that really liked it were probably like, oh, it's going to be weird and like magic. Is it going to like, am I really going to get it? But I feel like those people probably were like, wow, that was really good, and I liked that weird stuff. For me, it wasn't, like, weird enough. Like, I wanted more of it.
Exactly.
And unique enough, you know, like, where I wanted more of that, which I think it probably, if you're going to cater to an audience, it makes more sense to cater to the larger ones. So, but overall, really good. Good. And I will say, though, I love the ending of this movie.
Yeah.
Like, I think I heard a lot of people hating it, but I was like...
Really?
Well, not necessarily hating it, but not like... I was like, I absolutely loved it.
I was all up in that ending. That ending was great for me.
Perfect. Can we high five on that?
Yep. Oh,
perfect.
That's solid.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah.
Almost as good as that ending.
Yeah. Because, that ending... almost forgot they're kind of snoozing over there.
Yeah, they just woke back up.
Yeah, for that high five. But that ending, because then you almost think the risk that he takes. It's just like, what if that didn't pay off for him?
Yeah.
And maybe I won't spoil the ending either, but we know, and then people that watched it know. What if that didn't work out for him? He would have been, kind of screwed over.
Yeah, and it was that was a good ending because, like, you're like, again, similar with Civil War, you're like, all right, here we go, another basic ending. You're just kind of like, all right, we know how this third act ends. They go have this big battle with a faceless army, and then he gets there, and it's a shift. It's not what you expect.
Oh,
and it worked on me for sure because I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, because it was a thinker.
It was.
100%. He defeats kind of with knowledge
instead of his magic or fighting ability. It was like he outthought him. Yeah.
So fantastic because you see it happen.
Yep.
And then you slowly start understanding what's going on, and you see the enemy get worn down.
Yeah.
And him actually prevailing and making the deal. And, yeah, great. So it's such a different ending from any movie that we've ever gotten from Marvel.
For sure.
So that's why it stands out.
Yeah,
definitely.
Really good. I think it does. This movie does a good job of setting up the character, and so it has a really good first act and a really good third act. But it really meanders in the middle. The middle chunk of it is really losing its way a little bit, and then so the first part you're like, all right, I get it, I'm ready, let's do it. And then it's kind of like, and then the ending, you're like, all right, really good. Yeah. I think it really starts when things kind of go sour and he's kind of on his own. And his cape is awesome when he finally gets his cape, and his cape is a character in itself.
It is. It sure is.
And just something funny. One of the humor things that worked for me was when he said, when the villain's like, can I help you, mister? And he's like, doctor. And he's like, Mr. Doctor? It's kept calling him Mr. Doctor.
Yeah.
Was really funny to me. And that was the only piece of humor that really worked. But that was really funny. Just thought of that. But yeah, that was a movie where, the ending I really liked. It was very different. And it was like, wow, okay, cool. Yeah. So I think maybe rewatching it, I haven't really... It's on Netflix now, right?
I'm not sure.
I think I saw it on there. I might rewatch it on there. But, I remember liking it, not loving it. But, like we said, as just an origin story, it does a good job setting up the character, and I feel like this is one where he would probably work really well in an ensemble too.
Yeah,
because he can do different stuff like magic and stuff. So.
Yeah, that'll be interesting with him.
We'll see. And then the next one that came out was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which this was pretty recent.
Yeah.
And I went in, I think a lot of people went in with pretty high expectations because the first one was so good. And, you know, I remember just the trailers were really good. And I'll just let you go first what you thought of it.
Sure. During it, I didn't want... I guess I do this with pretty much any movie now, is not set my bar so high.
Yeah.
Because we've been let down before.
Yeah.
So, with this movie, I just went in hoping I got an average movie out of it. And I did like it quite a bit more, because we've talked about our opinions off the podcast here, and I definitely seem to have liked it the most, kind of out of our group.
Right.
Because, I don't know, the music's...
Again, good.
Yep, still good music. And I don't know, the humor kind of worked with me. I get what people are against in the movie. Because I feel like, you know, we got more of a face for this villain, you know.
Yeah.
It's more... I mean, you obviously figured it out right away, too. That, okay, this is going to be our issue.
Right.
Yeah. Typical, predictable movie. But... And so I really get that, and why...
But before we get into what we didn't like about it, what did you really like about it? We'll start with that.
I did like... You know, all those characters. I was a big fan of Baby Groot and everything. And, is it Quinn? Yeah. Peter Quinn. Yeah. Peter Quill.
Star-Lord.
Yep, Star-Lord. And, I don't know, I felt like he was still great. Drax was funny. Bouncing. Oh, Drax is
my favorite part in this movie.
Drax's humor was spot on in this movie.
He did have a lot more to do in this movie, and I loved him in the. He was probably my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, I'd say the humor was good for me. I still liked all the Guardians of the Galaxy. I felt like they were all still hitting it home. A few of those little enemies at the beginning, the way that they kind of tied humor into it, I thought was great.
Okay.
How they were like chasing them down with these drone pods or whatever you want to call what they were using, and how it was kind of like a video game for them. I found that really funny. Before you got introduced to the actual villain.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think those parts were the best out of the movie, but then I probably have the negatives next. But what'd you like about it?
Yeah, I think I really liked... One thing, I loved Drax. I think Drax was phenomenal in this film. His character just had more to do, and his arc was really realized from the last movie, because the first one, he's kind of like this big scary guy who kind of keeps to himself, and then he sort of becomes more of a lovable guy throughout. But this one, he starts there, and he just is so damn lovable the whole time.
Definitely.
And just really funny. Like, everything he said really worked well for me. So I really like Drax. Just watching Chris Pratt as Star-Lord is just entertaining. You know, he just does a really good job at that. So his stuff was good. And I do like Kurt Russell, so just anytime seeing Kurt Russell on screen is just like, I'm in.
Yeah, for sure.
They used a new kind of camera for this movie.
Yep.
Which I know I talked to you about before it came out, is the new red, I forget what it's called, but like you can totally tell this movie was beautiful.
It was. Oh, so gorgeous.
So gorgeous. I mean, like, this has the best color palette of any of the movies, which we've talked about off the pod before, but like that's one of the things I don't love about Marvel movies is that their color palettes are a little bit gray and they're not as contrasted, because they use digital cameras and stuff, which in the past weren't ever quite as good as film as contrasting darkness and stuff. But that was one. But Guardians of the Galaxy first one was very colorful. Did look very good. But this one just took it to a whole nother level and just looked just gorgeous from beginning to end. Really great special effects again. The soundtrack again was good, and I liked because the first one was really good, but it was kind of like it felt like a greatest hits. It was kind of like everybody loves all these songs.
Oh, that's exactly what it was.
Right, but then the second one was all really good songs, but it wasn't like the ones you automatically think of. So I really appreciated that a lot because the first one was kind of like I know all these songs are great. I think everybody knows these songs are great. And then you play them, and then people are like, "Oh, this is amazing," And so, to me, it was like that was kind of a cheap one. But this one, they were able to find songs that were not quite as well known. Yeah, in the first one, everybody loves "Sweet Caroline." Yeah, "Ooga Chaka, Ooga Ooga Ooga." That was a big part of the first movie, which worked well. But it was kind of that's a great song, And this one had great songs, but it was just a different mix of them, which I really appreciated.
Yep, for sure.
A lot.
Yeah, and that's what I think some people dogged on the movie for. I've heard some people give their reviews, and they say that the songs were less memorable, and it's just I don't know, you just can't. I mean, you got all the hits in the first one. You got a majority of the hits, I should say.
Right.
It's not like they can just keep playing these songs. I don't know. It's kind of nice what we got, I think. I
definitely really appreciate it because they're all really good songs, but it was a different vibe of songs in the first one.
Yep.
And I guess that kind of goes into with sequels, a lot of times sequels are hard. Franchises are not easy to do. And especially a franchise within a franchise is weird. It's a weird anomaly. But this one, I feel when the first one had the bar set pretty high, it was really good. Villain wasn't that good, but it was really fun and really fun. One of the most fun movies ever made. I think it's probably easy to say. But so this one was kind of I think people were expecting that again, Yeah. And it's kind of with sequels, it's do you just do the same movie twice?
Yeah, exactly.
Or do you take a risk and try other things? And I think some of the best sequels are ones that do it differently and do it a little bit darker.
Yeah.
And I will say that this movie tried to do that. I saw what they were trying to do with the characters. Yeah. And it just didn't quite work for me. And I feel the whole movie is set around that. So it kind of, I can get into specifics, but that was kind of where it was it just didn't quite hit it as much. But it took a risk, which is something commendable.
And I feel you just have to, switch up the formula.
Yeah. Otherwise, it just becomes another movie.
Yep.
Because
you definitely saw him change pace. And there's definitely just really weird moments in the movie that even when I was watching it and still enjoying the movie, I'm whoa, that was weird. I'm just gonna forget about that. Just such strange parts that I don't think would ever happen. One that I'll just say really quick is when Star-Lord and his dad just decided to play catch. I'm that is so weird and cringy. Just don't put that in the movie. Why did that just happen? It's hey, we can finally play catch. What is this real? That was so off. Bad. Yeah, that really threw me off. And a few other scenes in the movie, but I felt the final battle was good with the CGI that they did and everything.
The other good thing I was going to say is Yondu was great.
Yondu.
He was really good in the first one, and they gave him more to do in the second one, and it paid off. He really was great.
Yeah, because his crew started to distrust him. I don't know how much we should talk spoilery about this either.
Fine. We don't have to get into it.
Yeah, but I'll say that he proves himself in such a way that you probably wouldn't expect, especially coming out of Disney. It's crew, you don't disrespect me. And I don't know, I feel everything done with Yondu is done great. Yeah. And Yeah, really great, I think.
Yeah. But, like, so a couple of specific harps I'll get onto just to...
Sure.
But before I do that, I know I'm kind of contradicting myself when I say, like, I wish Doctor Strange took more chances, and then now I wish that Guardians of the Galaxy 2 didn't take as many chances.
Sure.
It's not necessarily just that. It's just the execution of it.
Yeah.
Like Doctor Strange, like we said, had really good parts, and I think if it had a middle that was a little bit better, that could have been a really, really great movie, you know. And same with this. Like, if the chance they took paid off, then yeah, it would be a different conversation.
Yeah.
But they did take a risk, and it's commendable. But, like, I know for some people it really worked. Like, I've seen a couple reviews where people were like, this was great. And I wish I could have felt that.
Sure.
But, you know, in this case, it just didn't work for me. Rocket, I didn't like him kind of on his own. Mainly because of Baby Groot. And I'm going to say something not as popular here, so look out, folks. But I don't love Baby Groot. I don't really think he's a good character. And it's just because, like, Groot is a great character.
Yeah.
Phenomenal character. And he's kind of like the Chewie, where he has his own language and only one person can understand him. You know, like, that's definitely the dynamic they're going for. But, like, Groot had a lot of wisdom in the first one. You know, he showed it. And he was this big, lovable guy who, like, knew what was going on. And, like, Baby Groot was just a baby, so, like, doesn't have any wisdom and is making mistakes and doing dumb shit, you know, which just got annoying to me. And, like, Big Groot made Rocket a better character, you know, like...
Yeah,
because it gave Rocket more to say, gave him more to play off of, and then it showed you more of Rocket because he was... reflecting himself off of Groot in a way. So they tried to give Rocket more stuff to do and give him more character, but it just didn't quite work for me. And then, like, I liked Rocket more with Groot, and then Groot is kind of not there in a way, you know? It's like baby, and then it's just annoying, and it's like, yeah, I get it, he's a baby. So, like, that didn't really work for me, which was a risk, because you could have just had him as fully grown Groot in this movie, you know? But, so, like, that was one thing. I love Drax, all Drax stuff. Drax is, like, sort of love interest in the movie. She was a terrible character.
Yeah.
And was just, like, really stupid. And that was, like, so shoehorned in.
Yeah.
Kurt Russell, again, I like, but it's just because he's Kurt Russell. Like, they gave him a lot of screen time, but I don't think they set up the character well enough for me to really care about. And then, like, it just, the sister stuff was awful.
That was
probably
bad.
The worst part.
Yeah, I can completely agree with that. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
But it was not done well.
No, it was
because
not.
I loved what they said.
Yeah, I agree. It was good writing.
Executed, yeah.
Like, what they were saying, you're like, I get it, but like, just the way...
Like, that's so, like, sad and everything, but it just wasn't... They just didn't do it right.
No.
There's so much that they just didn't do right. Like I said, the awkwardness of the dad stuff. Yeah. The sisters were bad. And everything like that.
And like you said, like, it was pretty predictable pretty quickly of what was going to happen.
You just saw his ship come in, and you're like, oh, he's accepting him? He's a bad guy.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, we still have like an hour left of this movie? It was pretty much like, when are we going to get to it?
Yeah.
And then, like, the finale, like, I'll say I did get goosebumps when, like, Yondu has that great line where he says, whatever, I use my heart, or whatever, and he's like, it was kind of dumb, but it worked for me when he's like, he's your father, but I'm your daddy, or whatever, like, and then, like, when Fleetwood Mac kicks on, like, that's just a great song, but when the music finally hits and he hits him, like, it was like chills, like, boom, like, I was like, all right, but then, like, that just kind of was fine, and then, like, it was kind of inconsequential at the end, you know, like, I kind of wanted a little bit more of what, you know, I wanted a little more side effects of what happened, and there wasn't, you know what I mean, like, it was kind of like, okay, on to the next thing, you know, and just the fact that they really set up the mystery of his dad in the first one, of, like, being like, ooh, I wonder who he is. And then just like, oh, this is him. Yeah. It was just so like, oh, ruin that. Like, it wasn't even mysterious at all in the second one. It was just like, boom, here you go.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really done that well. So
it really wasn't, yeah.
So this one, like I said, I can see what they were trying to do. It just didn't quite work for me.
Yeah.
But I think if you just want a movie to throw on in the background, I think this would be a really good one because it's great visuals and it's great soundtrack. So
and still had its moments.
Like, yeah, Drax was hilarious. Yondu gave me the chills a lot. Like, they really fleshed him out very well. But just some of the other stuff just didn't quite work.
Yeah.
But, you know, and then that brings us to the most recent Marvel movie, Spider-Man Homecoming.
Mm-hmm.
Which I saw in Omaha, which I talked about in the last one.
Yep.
That was the first movie I saw when I got down there. And like I've said many times in this pod, I've always been a big Spider-Man fan. Mm-hmm. I don't care if he's a lot of people's favorites. He was my favorite when I was a kid, so I'm not a pleb for that. But and he's just like we said in Civil War, they planted that seed so well in Civil War. You were just like, hopefully the movie can expand on it.
Yeah.
And I'll just say going into it, I was excited to see it, but again, I didn't have my expectations set very high. Mm-hmm. I was kind of like, I really liked him in Civil War, but I don't know if they can do that for a whole movie. Yeah. You know. Mm-hmm. So I guess we'll see. And this movie was not what I expected, which made me really like it a lot. Yeah. Like, I think I honestly almost loved it. I wouldn't say I quite loved it, but the way, I mean, it's pretty close.
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to say I loved it, though. Like, I really, alright, fine. I kind of loved it. Yeah, I kind of loved it.
Yeah.
And just like, it was Spider-Man as a kid, but just, this didn't feel like a Marvel movie. You know, it did, but it didn't. It didn't feel like it was just in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like its own thing in the best way, but also like obviously Iron Man's in it a lot.
I was gonna say if Iron Man wasn't in it, then probably
it would pretty much be like
felt like it at all.
But what did you think going into it?
He had a great story in place for him.
Yeah.
The people. The construction people scavenging or working on the site.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Working on the actual alien, harvesting the stuff.
Yeah, and that's that kind of inner universe stuff that you can't do in other movies.
Like, because I didn't do much research. I just watched the trailer, and then I started going into it pretty much clean slate.
Same.
Yeah, and so seeing what they had for him as a story was great, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so much memorable stuff that I've been thinking and everything. Like, this random construction worker was kicked off, for the government to take over, and he kept saying, like, the world is changing, so we gotta change with it. And then he pretty much turned into the villain somewhat to harvest these space weapons, basically, and to try to fight off, the super heroes in case he needed to. Like, it's like, it really shows a concern that if you were in that time that people were probably facing. It's just like, what is happening? Like, all these superheroes are coming, but even more villains are coming.
Right.
Is this even a good thing? And like, this guy is just like, all right, I gotta take matters into my own hands so I know I'm protected.
And he never like went off the deep end and was like, I'm evil now.
Yeah.
Like, he was just a guy.
Yep. Yeah. That's probably the best part too.
Yeah.
Is when one guy wanted to leave, or he was gonna fire one guy, he didn't say like, you're fired, shot him in the face.
Yeah.
He said, you gotta leave, like, we're done having you here. And he said, all right, well, I'm pretty knowledgeable. It'd be a shame if all this stuff got out. And it was him saying that made him kind of realize,
I can't.
Oh my gosh, like, that you're right. All these people have to stay here or else we'll be compromised. Yeah. And then he had to take matters into his own hand. He didn't really realize that before that. And I liked it. You really saw that he was an average person.
Yeah. He was just a family guy down on his luck.
Yep.
and he decided to make his own opportunities.
Yeah, I don't know. I felt like that movie was really, really fun.
Great, yeah, like you said, I thought it was a great... I don't think enough people are talking. I thought it was a great villain.
Yeah.
I mean, Michael Keaton's a great actor, but they really set up the villain. They spent probably the most time on a villain setup of any movie since before, you know?
Yeah, because you pretty much started with him.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, he was at the very beginning of the movie, and you just kind of watched him grow, and how he was being successful, and it kind of seemed like... I haven't seen too much of like Breaking Bad, but you know, it's just like I'm just an average guy, you know, and I'm making a living, you know, but I'm still an average guy and everything. Yeah. But him having to escalate past that and everything. I don't know. I thought the villain was great, and how they treated everything. I thought that was really great.
I did too, and the way that they handled that. And then they really, really focused on Peter being in school and, like, the responsibilities of school and being Spider-Man. Yeah. And, like, the really, like literally training wheels program for him. Like, they don't want to... Because it makes sense, because he's a kid. Like, they're like, no, we don't want you doing too much stuff.
And the kid's just
like... And the kid's like, no, I want to do more, which is what a 16-year-old would want, you know? And would make dumb decisions like he did. And he was sounded like Spider-Man a lot. Like, in the comics, what you think of as Spider-Man, when he's wearing the suit, sounded like Spider-Man a lot to me. Yeah. And it was like he's a good kid. He's a smart kid. He's kind of nerdy. He wasn't like a cool guy. Oh, yeah. Like they tried to make in the Amazing Spider-Man 2 movies. Like... It was like, when was Peter cool? You know, like, it didn't really make sense. But he was just like a nerdy dude. And I liked that Flash Thompson, the bully, was like a rich kid who wasn't like, and like doing horrible things to him. Because that's not really what... There's some bullies that are like that, but like it makes more sense if he's just like whatever, you know. Just
it felt so normal.
Yeah, it did.
It wasn't like an over exaggeration.
Which is why so many people love Spider-Man, is because they can relate to being just a normal kid and being weird.
Yeah, like the bullies weren't coming out and be like, "I'm gonna shove you in a locker."
Right.
You know? It's like he just went to this party and bullies are just like, "Hey, fuck you, Peter."
Yeah, it's like, "Oh, penis Parker."
Yeah, you know, like
so good.
Like stuff that would actually happen in high school. You know.
And then like when you're a kid, that means so much more. Like as an adult, when we're watching this, like they're just kids. But like when you're a kid, that's like the whole world is people liking you and stuff. Yeah. So and his friend, who I didn't know how the friend character was gonna work.
I was a little nervous for him.
I was too. Was so good. He was so funny and such a great like best friend character. I was really nervous about that, but that worked out really well. Aunt May was really good, and she was super hot. And
I was gonna say that's so funny how like everyone is like, Aunt May, you're so hot, and Peter's just like, no, like he doesn't even know. He's just like, wait, and then it's like kind of comes up, he's like, don't talk, you know, like he like quickly switches over.
Marissa Tomei is smoking. Oh my gosh, she is good looking still.
It's just so funny that like they were out to eat. And even that scene where, like, hey, these are complimentary because, you know, basically
because she's hot.
And then Peter's kind of just like It's like, it's so, like, uncomfortable. They do it so great. And she's just like, oh, well, that's so nice. Like, she's so, like, innocent.
She knows.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And Iron Man, like, I was afraid Iron Man was going to overshadow him in the movie. Yeah. Because... the marketing, they played up to him a lot, and I didn't think he was. Like, I was really nervous.
Really far away from the project.
Most of the time. And I really was afraid that it was gonna be like, hey, look, you like Iron Man, right? Here's a bunch of Iron Man. But it really was Spider-Man's story. It was Peter's story.
Because Iron Man was very separated from the whole movie, kind of. He was there at the beginning, and then he's just like, I'm out. And then eventually gets thrown back in here and there at the end. And that's great, because then Spider-Man can actually shine and everything like that. Like, Spider-Man's trying to get in contact with Tony Stark, but, like, he just can't, which is just really good, what they did.
And, again, the ending was really good, I thought. I really liked the ending, and it was different. And the thing that I liked about it was this movie wasn't trying to be big and epic. It stayed small, and I really, really liked that. We won't get into too many spoilers, obviously, with the ending, but just the way it ended, the way things kind of came together, worked really well for me. The only kind of weird gripe I have is a weird thing, is like that it's called Spider-Man Homecoming, and it has almost nothing to do with the homecoming dance. Like, because I thought maybe like there would be a bigger thing at the actual homecoming dance, but really, I mean, it could have been called Spider-Man Science Fair, because the science fair had more to do with it than that, you know?
Yeah.
But it was fine, you know? It was like, it's just a title, like, who cares? I don't really care that much, so
definitely.
It was just kind of like, whatever. But yeah, that was really good. I really, really enjoyed it. And then, what I was going to say, Chris Stuckman, my favorite YouTube reviewer, he just said about it, like, he really liked it, and he's a big Spider-Man fan. What he said kind of stuck out to me was which I didn't notice at the time until he said it, but he just said that, like, the action kind of was shot well, but it didn't really feel that real, you know, in close range. But he's like, because with the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies that we grew up with, that action was very visceral in your face, and you really felt it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I actually bought that trilogy on Blu-ray and rewatched parts of this. I was like, that's true. Like, it's a lot in camera and stuff. Where this was like a lot of CGI, which is fine. But I mean, like, that's a valid complaint, I guess. I didn't notice it myself until like he said it, and I was like, okay, I can see that. But otherwise, really good movie. And man, we are going a long time.
Yeah, I know.
We should probably wrap it up.
Yeah, really should.
But before we do, I just want to get into kind of what we're looking forward to in the Marvel Universe really quick. So the next one's coming out is Thor Ragnarok, which I'm extremely excited for.
Yes.
Like, I'm afraid because my hype level's getting pretty high.
I know.
But I will say that I love this director, Taika Waititi. Or Waititi. He is a New Zealand guy. And he directed What We Do in the Shadows, that hilarious vampire movie that I love. Hunt for the Wilder People. He did a bunch of Flight of the Conchords stuff. His really interesting, quirky sense of humor you saw in the Where Was Thor during Civil War. That he directed all those. So that's that's his sense of humor to a T.
Great.
So you see a little bit in the trailers, and I'm like. And just, I follow him on social media and stuff, and it just seems like he's having a blast. Like, some of these people, like, even Joss Whedon in the second Avengers, seemed like he was tired. Seemed like he was really getting to him. But, like, the Russo brothers always seemed like they did all the Captain Americas, like, they really were working hard, having fun. And this guy seemed like he's been having a blast doing this. But you're always afraid with people with smaller movies, but, like, this, like... It looks phenomenal, and I'm, like, really excited to see a fun... It looks like almost Planet Hulk-y movie with Thor, and I'm just so pumped to see it, because I love Thor, and I'm just excited to see... It looks super fun and really colorful, and...
I'll just touch on mine quick here, too, that I'm excited for the title ever since I saw it. Each trailer that drops, I get more excited.
Yes.
Everything is just going right for me in this movie. Everything I've wanted to see so far, like, they've announced is going to happen. I try not to get overhyped. But, like, everything is going right so far for this movie, so I'm really excited.
Same. And that's coming out in November. And then we have the Black Panther standalone movie. I think that comes out in February. And then that one, I'm excited for. I think it looks good. Ryan Coogler's directing. That's the thing I'm most excited about. He directed Creed, kind of wrote Creed. And Creed is so good. It's like made my favorite Rocky-ish movie.
Sure.
So, like, it just looks really good, and I know he's a really good director. So, hopefully that's good. We haven't seen too much for it yet.
Nope.
But I know the poster that came out looked awful for it. So, hopefully the movie's better than the poster.
Sure.
But it's just a poster, so there's that. And then there's the new Avengers Infinity War. Which that'll be next summer. Don't really know I'm obviously excited for it. That'll be finally Thanos. We've been setting that up a lot.
Been dying to see him.
Finally. Hopefully that'll be good. We'll see how that works. And then Ant-Man and the Wasp. Fine, I'll see that. You know,
definitely.
I like the title. Then Captain Marvel, which Brie Larson was cast finally, and I know a little bit of her story, but we'll see how that all ties in. And then there's another Untitled Avengers film, and then another Spider-Man sequel, and then Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and then we'll see from there. But apparently the thing is that I've heard a lot of people say that there's going to be a big shakeup for the third Avengers movie. Yeah. Because I know like Chris Evans kind of wants to be done playing Captain America for a while. Because I'm sure it's hard to stay in that good of shape for that long. So like, which I get. He probably wants to take a little bit of a break.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I get that, and like. Robert Downey Jr. maybe does too. I don't really know for sure, but maybe at that point, I wouldn't mind taking a little bit of a break from that kind of stuff.
For sure.
Because we've had a lot of years of all this stuff.
Yeah, where it just keeps coming out.
Coming out. So maybe if there is a little bit of a shake-up and we can kind of have a little rebuilding period, I'd be okay with that too.
Yeah, that'd be good.
But we'll just have to see. But I appreciate you guys sticking through us. That's by far our longest episode.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad that we sat down and went through the whole thing because I haven't really thought about it before. And I think this really maps out how much we like these movies and how much they've really meant to a lot of people.
Definitely.
Even though Jerdo hates them and hasn't given them a chance, you could see how much time and effort we put into.
See, I couldn't let this podcast just keep going down as the hate for Marvel. I had to come. I
know it's hard to fight old legs, but I appreciate it. Well, check me out on Twitter. I'm at Luke Larson89. You can find this podcast at L2 Podcast on Twitter or L Squared Podcast on Facebook. We're on SoundCloud or YouTube as you're listening to us here. Check out Tyler. He's got great YouTube videos, video game commentary at Burdette Dog on YouTube. BURDETTEDOG. He does a lot of great gaming stuff, The Walking Dead, some golf with friends type stuff. But I appreciate you guys checking it out, and thanks for tuning in. Peace.